Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Liberty Libations number 125. I think Nick disappeared. Oh, well.
He disappeared, yeah.
My name's Jake Green, joined as usual by Zach Varnell and Alden Hardee, and Nick Ciesielski is somewhere in the background. I have no idea where he went. And our guest for today is Paul Greenberg. He's a journalist and author. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I've written 7 books. I write a lot for the New York Times and a lot of other magazines and papers out there. Weirdly, completely contrary to the spirit, I think, of this episode, I'm mostly known for fish. I wrote a bestseller about 10 years ago called For Fish, The Future of the Last Wild Food. I'm a big fisherman. I have a sense this is a fishy crowd here, right?
So, I am,
yeah.
I'm a fish. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, so I spend most of my sort of day job is writing and talking about fish, researching about fish and ocean ecosystems, and trespassing on people's property and catching their fish.
I did a lot of that as a teenager.
Me too. My mom.
I have citations.
I have many torn pairs of jeans. Hopping over the Rockefeller property in Connecticut to get to their extra-sized bass. But in addition to that, I actually have a big, long history in pro-democracy stuff. I worked in the former Soviet Union right after the fall of the Soviet Union for a nonprofit called Internews that was developing independent television stations all over the former Soviet Union in that sort of brief window of democracy that we had in Russia in the early to mid 90s. Written a couple of novels, and the novel in question tonight is this book called A Third Term, which is, I was out there doing all my fishy stuff, making good money, doing all this stuff, writing and talking about the environment and fish. But actually, way back in 2020, and I don't know, what the nature of this crowd is with respect to the present occupant of the White House. But I just there was so much crazy stuff coming out of that guy's mouth that it occurred to me back in 2020 that if George Washington himself were to run against him, that there were a lot of people that would probably vote Trump over Washington. And so that idea sort of stuck with me. And then in a kind of fury that I've never experienced in my writing life, in about 30 days, I wrote this novella called A Third Term, in which George Washington is, in fact, brought back from the past to run against Trump. I wrote it in 2020. Nobody wanted it, couldn't sell it. And then when Trump lost, I put it in a drawer. I thought, okay, we're done with all that. But then we're back. And a bunch of people, got behind me and supported the book. The cover is by... copy from here. The cover is, you might recognize it if anyone reads The New Yorker out there. It's by a pretty famous artist named Barry Blitt, and he's done all of these New Yorker covers about Trump and so forth. So he got on board, and once that happened, kind of kept going. So there I am right now, still doing fish, but also still doing Washington when I can squeeze in an interview with people like you.
You're busy, man. That's a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of stuff.
I'm impressed that you completed writing even a novella in 30 days. I have book projects that have been working on closer to 30 years that I've not finished. So.
Believe me, I do too. And it's, it's funny because all of my fish books have been total slogs, where, you get really excited. Like with For Fish, there was actually a bidding war for the book, and, 4 different publishers were trying to buy it, and then they sold it. And then the next day I was like, holy shit, now I have to write this thing. And that was my first experience of really just like, wow, nose to grindstone, here's a real deadline. And I've written 2 other fish books since then. And there are a lot of research, a lot of travel, a lot of thinking, a lot of writing. And I'd heard these stories about writers who say, oh, I didn't write this, I took dictation, from the atmosphere. And I'd never had that experience before, but with this book I did. And, I guess my only advice is if you've got a 30-year project, it helps to have a 30-day project also.
Yeah, I learned a similar thing as an ADHD person and a perfectionist. And it's like, I work in circuit and I have like a long-term project and a short-term. I 100% agree. And it gives you that little boost when you finish the small thing to then be like, okay, now I'm going to tackle a little bit more of the bigger thing. And I definitely have learned this the hard way, that just taking on big, giant projects and never finishing any of them is very disheartening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was different with this book that I'd never done before, actually, I think I did it on my first novel, was I decided to write it longhand, on, with pencil and literally with pencil and paper.
Wow.
And, as somebody, Alden, who like doubles back in as a perfectionist myself, there is something about the momentum of the written word, and your hand just has to keep going across the page. The endless editability of computer-based writing, I think, bogs a lot of us down.
I find that when I'm in the outlining space, when I'm like just like doing the rough draft of a story and things like that, pen and paper is like the way to go. And then sometimes when I'm like trying to like really kind of hone it in, I'm actually a little faster on typing. I've been practicing two things. One is like trying to kind of get like my own version of like shorthand down so that I don't get caught up in the the little details of crossing T's and dotting I's and grammar and stuff, and I can just kind of like really get it out as fast as my mind can spit it out. And free association writing as like just a habit and a practice, just to kind of sometimes just like move the hand and just like put ink to paper and just like break that writer's block and just kind of see what happens. And
absolutely. Well, there's a great book by a author named Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird. One of the best books on writing I've ever read, and she always says that every great book begins with a shitty first draft, and just
or a few, that's cool.
But the shitty, just getting something on paper that you have something to work with later on is a major step, and a major step against all those mental impediments that bear you into the ground.
I was just going to say the mental blocks, and one of the tricks that I've learned is sometimes I'll say, this isn't going to be anything, it's just a practice exercise. And I'll just start writing like an excerpt from a book that doesn't exist.
Right.
Like I'll start on page 68 or whatever and just be like, where am I at now? And just like, and again, almost as a free association thing. And I have this middle chapter of a book that doesn't exist, but it's like, and then I'll be like, oh, I like what I did there, or whatever. And I'm not overthinking it. And it's a good exercise to get rolling.
Yep. Totally true.
We think of like fishy people.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, we have a comment that I'd like to discuss here for a second. Buddy said nobody would vote for Washington today because he wouldn't fund any of today's government.
I was going to make you pull this back up and say that that's an interesting point in general. And I was going to say the concept, whether like in the story that you had, like Paul, whether running against Trump or any particular person, it's interesting to think about anyone from like the founding father days, what they would think about how our government operates now, and like what the rate of taxes are, or like what the integration, intertwining in with the public and private sector, and various things with military or whatever it is, like just an interesting exercise more broadly to think about.
No, I mean, there were many potholes and many sinkholes that I could have fallen into in writing this book.
That's
and
fair.
Certainly, and I almost make a joke at one point during one of the debates that Trump and Washington have. I just sort of dismiss it as, the audience got bored when the conversation turned to a lengthy discussion of emoluments. But, ultimately, though, what the book is really about is about character, and about, standing for something and being brave. And that was, it's funny because the book came out, or rather, I should say, when I first tried to sell the book back in 2020, it was the middle of the Black Lives Matters movement. And I remember my agent at the time thought that that nobody really wanted to hear about Washington, because, obviously he was a slave owner and all those kinds of things. And you'll see in the book that there is, Washington does have to confront his own, personal legacy, which is not pretty as a slave owner. But on the other hand, whose slave owning legacy was pretty at that time.
I was going to say, not to single anyone out, but
So, but what I think would strike him as, when you're writing something, when you want to have a dramatic arc, right? It's, if you get too sort of bogged down in issues of policy and like I could have said, like, I could have thrown Gaza in there and so forth, but like it just separates you from identifying with the characters themselves.
Right.
And I think, like, for example, what would Washington have said to a president who not only didn't do military service, but actively, worked connections to get out of military service.
Avoid, yeah.
And then overall, the thing that you could say, I started to say with Washington, there's many things you could say about him. He was a slave owner. He was actually a clothes horse. He was in debt quite a bit because of clothes and fancy carriages and things like that. But what is impossible to say about him is that he was a coward. He was an incredibly brave person. There are accounts of him in his first command that was made somewhat famous by the musical Hamilton. It's just alluded to in one of the songs in the second act, where he literally charged at the head of his troops into a battle. I think it was at Ohio Forks, just not paying any mind to all the gunfire that was there. People right and left getting cut down. And when he returned from the charge, his tunic was full of musket ball holes. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
And so say what you will. I mean, I don't know where the political spectrum is in this particular chat room here, but I don't see Donald Trump getting on a horse and charging into musket fire.
I think we all agree with you there. None of us are.
You would disagree with that, yeah.
Yeah, none of us are huge Trump fans.
We're
libertarians. We don't like anybody.
Yeah. Actually, so I wanted to know that. Libertarians, one of the things that I'm a New Yorker, and maybe I'm like the cursed, vision of the Jewish guy in New York, overhanging. but like, what are libertarians thinking about this particular period in history? And what's the good, what's the bad? You're my only hope, and you're my only connection to libertarianism. I've never spoken to a libertarian before.
Well, I hope we don't paint a bad image, but go ahead.
Our nerdiest of libertarians is not on the show tonight. Otherwise, he would be going on a rampage right now, just telling you everything.
Very libertarian principled rant, yeah.
But generally speaking, all we want is much, much smaller government. And in fact, the most minimal government that there is, most of the power we want given back to the states. We want the federal government to basically be the one to enforce natural rights. And that's it, like nothing else.
Inalienable and self-evident and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, inalienable. Rights. Yeah.
That's a hard word to say. Inalienable.
So like what falls under the umbrella of natural rights?
Right to property, right to own yourself. Nick, you want to jump in?
And not others.
I think you're on the right track there, right? So you own yourself, so you own the product of your labor. You have the you own what you earn, you own what property you buy with what you earn. You have the right to defend yourself as you see fit, and that's kind of the basics of it. It's really fairly simple.
It's pretty simple, man.
Yeah.
So needless to say, Trump stomps all over a bunch of things that we believe. We think, just like most presidents, he does a few things that are good, but mostly we think he does pretty terrible things.
I always go into a term with hope. I want to see some good come out of it. And then, like, one of the earliest things he did was the tariff thing, and I was like, here we go. Just something that I just can't get behind, and whatever. But
I always feel with Trump, he reminds me a bit of, like, do you remember the old Peanuts cartoon with Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown? And he's like, she's like, I'm not going to pull the football away. I promise. Chuck, I'm going to hold the. I'm totally going to every single time. And I remember, like, again, from my sort of particular New York point of view, when the Republican National Convention happened and Vance brought out Usha Vance, and it was like, he's sort of a metro guy. He's got this Indian wife and, a bunch of kids. He seems educated and stuff like that. But then, the crazy rant in the Oval Office with Ciesielski and stuff. I mean, it's upsetting. So
the football analogy is actually kind of interesting, and I would maybe expand this even to include not just Trump, but when a certain party like beckons to a group and be like, no, this time it'll be different. This time it'll be different. And then you get the grass is greener thing where you get that pendulum thing from one to the other. Yeah. And we keep jumping over the fence. And I think we keep getting kind of fooled and just historically watching a pattern of this and seeing who it benefits. You know, typically it's large corporations or the wealthiest or whatever, and like certain entities and government protecting itself and their own jobs.
Yep.
In the military and things like that. And a lot of the times average people just get sort of lost in the chaos and the crossfire, but keep voting for the kind of the same thing. And I feel like the football thing could apply even more to the entire system that we have, and not just, I like to not just focus on like one person at a time, because really I believe they're all puppets anyway. I
mean, what was it? I can't remember. Maybe it was Noam Chomsky said that politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex.
Exactly what he said.
Yeah.
And now we have an actual entertainer, you know, in that role. Yeah. It's maybe the most fitting.
Well, since Reagan, is Reagan the first person that was like in like entertainment and Hollywood and to be a president? Whatever, but like that's. I couldn't remember who the first, but it's been a modern thing where it's getting more and more in the celebrity, you know, division here of
for sure. It always was a popularity contest, but now it's becoming an even bigger popularity contest. We have an interesting comment regarding the musket balls being fired. Buddy says Trump was shot in the head and stood up and said, "Fight." You know, it's not the most cowardly thing to do.
I didn't think of that, at least. That's
you know, I thought it crossed my mind when I was saying that. He was nicked in the ear, first of all, and you know, the guy has incredible political instincts. The question isn't whether the question isn't whether he stands up after being shot and says "fight." The question is, the parallel would be he sees a sniper and walks toward him and says "fight." You know what I mean?
Fair.
That's like a big difference. And you know, I think Trump is very lucky. You know, I think he gets a lot of breaks in his favor, and he's politically skillful enough to opportunize in those moments. So you know,
I think that's maybe the thing he actually is good at and like does best is positioning himself there. You know,
100%. And I think so when you're comparing George Washington to literally any other president in my brain, he was the only one that didn't want the dadgum job. And if like every single president since then has fought hard to get that job. And those are generally people that shouldn't be trusted. Like if you want that much power, yes, you might be trying to do it for good or in the best interest of the most amount of people, but in the end, in some way, shape, or form, you're going to do things that harm people, that are hurtful to folks that are not protective of individual rights. So
and that's why I called this book A Third Term, because it's not just Trump's third term, it's Washington's third term. And if you look at the parallels between them, you know, George Washington, he didn't want his first term. He didn't want his second term. He was very much encouraged to run for a third term. And people were sorely disappointed when he chose not to. But remember, at the time, the 22nd Amendment did not exist. You could run for as many terms as you like. And that was true up until 1952, I think, when the amendment was passed. You know, of course, Roosevelt famously ran for 4, but it wasn't because that was illegal. It was just against precedent. And so, you know, that's the dramatic setup, right, in this book, is that you have somebody who's so voracious for power and influence and money on the one side, unconstitutionally fighting for a third term. And then you have another person on the other hand who desperately doesn't want it, and yet is being goaded into it. And it's funny, during this, I've been touring around a lot with this book. And one of the things that people are like, well, you know, what's the takeaway? And to me, the takeaway is what we're sorely missing in this country is a certain kind of leader that we honestly used to have. That's somebody who went into public service not to accrue wealth or massage their own ego or get on television. And I've met a few of them. I've been around politics and politicians for many years. Every once in a while, you meet this sparkly, amazing person who truly believes that they are the conduit of the will of the people and doesn't see it as sort of repressing people so that they can stand in front of them, but rather being almost inflated by popular will and trying the best that they can to do the will that is
But
invested
what's
in
the
them.
highest office that caliber person sort of reaches in this day and age? And I doubt it's president.
Yeah, I would say it's your governors. More and
Okay,
more. You know,
I would give you a handful of governors. Yeah.
You know, like look at Kemp. You know, look
That's
at
my governor. Yeah.
you know, look at
Kemp's got a pretty dark past, so I wouldn't lump him in with anything.
well, I'm just
I
saying.
don't know a lot about him yet. I just moved here, but
I mean, you know, just in terms of the moment, I just think about the moment when he could have not certified the election, or you know, when Trump was pressuring him to to go back on the elections. I thought that was pretty noble and bold, and he sort of stood the line in that kind of case. I think Chris Murphy,
although there was the whole incident with his daughter's boyfriend getting blown up in a car.
Yeah,
that's beyond my personal knowledge, but I'll take your word for it. I mean, I'm not holding up any one of these governors as models of great personal quality. I'm just saying, you were saying what's the highest office you could expect to find somebody of that kind of character. And I think I think the state level, certain mayors stand out, as being, like I think Pete Buttigieg, when he was mayor of South Bend, actually, I happened to be doing a lecture tour at Notre Dame when he was there still as mayor. And, people really liked him. He saw service as something that was not just for his own personal enfranchisement, but for, and hyping up, but to actually do service. So people ask me, like, why are you on touring with this book? What are you trying to inspire? I'm really just trying to get young people to lead. When I've been going to like universities and stuff, I think we're all probably vaguely the same age, right? You guys are like 40s, 50s kind of thing, or you sort of, am I right?
30s, 40s.
Oh, 30s, 40s, okay.
I'm just tired from painting all day, but I'm in my 30s. But
okay, all right, fair enough. But I mean, we're far enough from the Gen Z folks who I think are so paralyzed by their phones and who live so much within a virtual world that the idea of leading is just absolutely terrifying to them. And I teach university, and I do a lot of lecturing at a lot of universities around the country. And I've been seeing it as a rising trend among youth, this inability to take the reins. And so what I've been saying at the end of my lectures is like, what's your advice? I'm like, lead. I don't care if you want to be the head of your ping pong club. I don't care if you want to, I don't know, like be a head chef for your dining club. Just take some responsibility and carry forth, So, I mean, and in that respect, everything I've read about Washington and going into his life, he as a leader, I think was really interesting. And I think, was not interested in being a king, but was interested in this idea of how do you conduct the will of the people into a functional government. So there you have it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you said it took you 30 days to write it. And that's unbelievable. Like,
No,
I can't get past that because I write scripts and movies, and those things take me like a year and a half, 2 years to write. And so
well, it depends. My brother's actually a screenwriter in Hollywood, and I know how he sweats it out as well. But it's also interesting. I've written 6 books under the aegis of an editor at Penguin Press, or one other publisher that I've worked with. And having that editor over your shoulder is both useful in the sense that at least somebody's waiting for this, But when you're kind of just totally flying blind, it's kind of exciting, and maybe things flow a little bit more quickly.
Paul, do you have ADHD?
I've never been. Maybe I do. I've never been diagnosed, but I don't know. I mean, I find. I do find, on the ADHD front, the focusing is extremely, extremely difficult. I did actually write this during the pandemic, which I think was also, maybe there was something about the mood shift. We live in New York City. My son's school was closed, forever and ever. And a friend lent us her house out on the eastern end of Long Island, just a tiny little cottage not far from the beach. And it just the sheer openness and ability and access to the outdoors changed my mental state decidedly. So maybe that was the kick in the pants that I needed to kind of get going.
That's interesting.
I feel like that's something I've been missing since we just bought a house, is that we used to do a lot of hiking and stuff. And since we bought a house, I've been doing a lot of work on the house. Like my weekends are, I'm covered in paint and sawdust and other things. And I'm like, I am missing, I haven't been fishing since we bought the house, and it's
Oh
killing
God.
me. And I feel just part of my soul dying. And there's a river access about like 3 minutes down the road, and I've not gone to it. That's just, we bought a shitty house, so we have a lot of
Yeah. But it is
so,
interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, in your book, do they have vice presidential like running mates? Like, are they running with people, or are they just Trump versus?
Well, so they do of a sort. First of all, Trump in the book is never called Trump. He's just referred to as the tyrant, because when they bring Washington back from the past, one of my favorite things about the book is that Washington, he's very blasé about being brought back. Like, he opens his eyes in the ICU, and he's like, has a tyrant arisen? Like, yes, he has.
What's the mechanism there? Like, how does it happen?
Well, it's it's a little oblique. Again, because I didn't want to get bogged down. It's not really a strict sci-fi novel.
Yeah.
There's reference to an anomaly where they have only one chance. They have one chance to get one person at one time.
The Terminator.
And something like that. Yeah. But it was funny. A friend of mine who's really into science fiction said to me, "Dude, you should turn this into a show called The Anomaly. And every episode, you can pick one person." So, but to your question, Jake. So, Washington ends up. I don't want to do too many spoilers, but the slavery issue does actually rear its head in a really bad way, and suddenly Washington he's totally tanking in the polls, and so his campaign manager, really the kind of heart of the book is really his campaign manager, whose name is Robert Tonelly, and Tonelly is a kind of like David Axelrod, David Plouffe kind of magician, politician guy who's a little bit cynical and has kind of almost cynically brought back Washington because it's his only chance of winning. But in the way the book is about him learning about character from Washington and that politics isn't just a game, that it's really about leadership and so forth. So I won't totally spill the beans, but let's just suffice to say that a character is brought in to address the slavery issue as Washington's vice president. And for the tyrant's vice president, turns out that there are some right-leaning scientists who have also found their way to the anomaly, and it seems that they've brought somebody of their own back. So, but I'll leave it. I
like the mystery of who that is. Yeah, that's cool.
It's Warner von Braun.
No, but yeah, I mean, and to do a pitch for the book. I mean, the other thing that I wanted to do in writing this book was to write something short. My other books are pretty long. 300 pages or something like that. I do think that there is a tradition in times of political stress for the pamphlet. You think about Thomas Paine's Common Sense.
Yeah.
And then you think about, I don't know if you're familiar with Timothy Snyder. He wrote a very short book right after the 2016 election called On Tyranny. That was a huge bestseller.
On Tyranny?
On Tyranny, yeah. And it's just sort of about what you do. Snyder and I share a political background insofar as he's very much a scholar of Eastern Europe. And, one of the things that kind of gets my lights flashing about this administration is that I lived in the former Soviet Union during a brief window of democracy and watched it all kind of implode. And
that's an interesting perspective to have.
And I think a lot of people kind of give Trump a pass on the sort of his Putinophilia and so forth. But, I know Putin as a murderer of my colleagues, and as somebody who
I don't doubt that that's happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can be all jokey and stuff about, making light of the rule of law. But on the other side of the absence of the rule of law inevitably flows repression and violence. And, that's where I just, no matter how much you shrink your government, libertarians beware, you shrink your government so much, it's much more easily controlled by a single person. And then what happens,
Yeah, well, I mean, the point of libertarianism is to make it so that the federal government has almost no power, and that power is given to the
Like
states and
military
kind of
and naval.
disseminated out through the counties, through the cities, through the townships, and so forth. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah,
just a like basic thing for like just people can relate to is the amount that corporations have been tied in with the government for the last 100 years
Agree,
or so.
100%.
And basically you have corporations writing policy, and then the senators that they've purchased signing, voting in favor of these bills that then get signed by the president, who then benefits from those bills after they end their presidency.
And then you're able to have these corporations butter the senators' bread for years, and there's no term limit for senators. I was actually going to ask you, Paul, how do you feel? Should there be term limits for House of Representatives and senators and like other positions?
Absolutely, there should be term limits, and fuck it, there should be age limits. I mean,
there we go.
I'm sure I'm the oldest of this group here, but I wouldn't mind being, canceled for office because I was too old when I hit a certain mark. I mean, the fact that there are, octogenarians, whatever, 90-year-olds, 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds that are still wheeling their way around the Senate and the congressional floor is a freaking absurdity. And this goes on.
Dianne Feinstein was like full blown, like not there, just completely gone mentally.
Yeah.
And they were just voting for her. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, and then like you look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, thought that she was immortal and totally screwed her own agenda by not stepping down and getting herself replaced with a liberal judge. You look at, I don't know if you've been following the news. Well, I'm sure you follow the news, but there's a new book out. But well, there's a new book out by Jake Tapper and another author from CNN about the sort of waning days of the Biden administration. And there's an excerpt in the New Yorker about this big fundraiser that they tried to do in 2024 with George Clooney, and liked him, thought he was, sharp. And then when he saw him for the fundraiser, it was like, this guy is not here.
Who
is? And like literally wandered they do like an onstage thing with Clooney and Obama, like a threesome for this fundraiser, and it's like meant to be a sort of casual chat. And the chat ends after 20 minutes, and Biden just wanders to the front of the stage, like as if he has no idea where he is whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's a, as we say up in New York, it's a shonda. It's a scandal that wasn't brought to the attention of voters. I think
anyone paying attention saw that, though. It was the TV that was telling everyone, he's perfectly fine. I would say
that the vast majority of people who were paying attention knew. Like I saw Jake Tapper release that book, and I went back and watched some of his clips, saying that Biden was sharp as a tack for his entire presidency, kept defending him, and it was extremely clear before Biden was even elected that he was on a massive mental decline. And like Jake Tapper writing that book just seems like a way to cover your ass like 10 years from now. Being like, okay, well, like back, 10 years ago, or like, when Biden was president, Jake Tapper wrote this book and all this stuff, and no one's going to put together that it was like directly after Biden left office.
Right. But by the way, to circle back to Washington, Washington was a spry 67, I think, when he left office. And, that's some of the things I play with is that, when Washington awakes, he's suffering, he's malaria. He has a pustule in his thigh that breaks out all the time. His teeth, he has only a single bicuspid left in his mouth. And so they literally have to rebuild him to make him into a presidential candidate. And in my fantasy of fantasies, when the movie version of this gets made, we get Clooney to play Washington. And we make Clooney really ugly and old at the beginning, and then gradually he transforms into beautiful Clooney. And it's funny because Washington in his day was considered really like a stud, like really handsome. He's super tall, like just literally towered above other people. I think there's a line from Hamilton that's an actual quote of King George. There's no one else in this country who looms quite as large.
Yep. That's exactly what the line is.
Was he like 6'5" or something, or
what's that?
Was he like 6'5" or something?
I think he was 6'2", but that was quite
6'2".
tall.
Okay, that's my height, but back then I guess that was.
Yeah, no, he was a sizable man. So yeah, but getting back to to him, I think it's telling that he was considered old at 67, and that we are putting presidents into the White House at 80.
Starting later than that.
Yeah.
Grumpy Gnome thinks there should be a height limit for presidents.
I don't know. I mean, Dukakis surely didn't look good in that tank, but Napoleon stood out in his way.
That's fair.
I've known plenty of powerful short people. Going back to this age thing, it's in so many ways, the boomers have parked the bus in front of the goal line of leadership and failed to get out of the way, right and left and center. And it's disgraceful, and it's unpatriotic, and it's selfish. And that's why I'm saying, if I can use this book as an opportunity to get one young person, at the age of 22 or something, to run for city council or something, that would be amazing. It was funny when I was a kid. My brother was a huge comic book fan, and I remember there was a comic book this was early 70s, because it was like a big youth moment, right? And there was a comic book that came out. It just had a few issues. It was called Prez, and the idea was like a 19-year-old president or something like that, and somehow he becomes president.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. I might be misremembering. And today I was just watching. Have you guys heard of this show called The Young Pope?
Oh yeah, with
Jude Law. Yeah. But I mean, yes, young popes, young presidents, young governors, young states of representatives. I mean,
baby pope.
baby pope. And it's like have you guys seen Nate Bargatze's latest stand-up?
Yeah. I think I've seen. He's hilarious.
He's so funny, but he has that funny moment where he tells that whole horrible story about being at the county fair, where they literally get a donkey up onto a diving board and push it off, and it dives into. He's like, "Well, Peter took care of all that," but and then he segues somehow into AI, and he's like, "I don't think a man gets to see both things, AI and a donkey going up." And to bring it back to to the politics of the moment. The world is changing so much, and I like to think in my sort of Gen X kind of way that I have a foot in both the digital and analog world. But I think youth, well educated, is far ahead of us in terms of knowing how the world actually works. And if we could just get some of those people to step up, we would have a fresher mindset going into this century of ours.
I mean, I agree, and I think that far more young people are stepping up than what you may be privy to. I mean, I know Libertarian Party, we put forth a ton of young candidates for different positions. City council. I mean, Nick's run for a few things.
Hey, great.
And we just have someone
ran for state treasurer last year, and planning on running for township auditor this year, which
excellent
is just the thing, because literally no one on the Democrat or Republican is on the primary. So as long as no one runs a write-in campaign and takes it, I figured I'd rather
open seat.
Take it. Open seat. I'll get the signatures, get on and win.
And there's an organization called Young Americans for Liberty. Do you know them?
Nope.
They have, it's all about young Americans, learning to lead the country basically, and learning to fight for liberty. So I think there are more young people out there wanting to be leaders than what you might think.
I'd be happy to stand corrected. And I mean, you guys, I'm not, I don't really, this is as political as I've ever gotten in my life. From a writing
show.
Well, this show, but also, I guess I've been political in my environmental work. I write a lot of op-eds for the New York Times whenever something kind of seems contrary to what, fishing is a good topic because right and left fish, and fish very passionately. And like I remember one time I was doing a talk about it's a big project that they tried to shove through to put the largest copper and gold mine atop the largest salmon run in Alaska called Pebble Mine,
The
and we
Pebble
had
Mine,
the Pebble Mine,
familiar.
and we so Trout Unlimited organized a benefit at the Supreme Court, believe it or not, and a bunch of us spoke. And I was the one who spoke, one of the people who spoke. And I usually wear this fishing hat. It just has a blue fish on. So I was wearing my hat, and this older woman came up to me, and she grabbed the hat, and she goes, "Now, what's this?" And
wow.
I said, "It's my fishing hat." And she goes, "Huh." I go, "Do you want me to take it off?" She goes, "Yes, I would." And I took it off, and she goes, she holds out her hand. She goes, "I'm Sandy," and it was Sandra Day O'Connor. And she goes,
weird.
She goes, "I'm Sandy, and I'm a fisherman too."
What?
So
what a crazy turn of events. Okay.
That's a wild one. I think I would have taken that hat and just smacked her across the face.
Well, anyway, it was just proof that, like that there are these bipartisan issues around the environment, especially when it comes to hunting and fishing, that I think for libertarians, obviously, I'm sure that's a card you guys play. But I think
I think there's a lot of hunting and fishing among libertarians, actually.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy my hunting. Yeah.
Feed yourself and yeah.
That's
I mean, you can see the skull right behind me.
Yeah, there you go.
A little bit, yeah. It's a little small, but yeah.
Nice.
I mean, you can see I'm on a freaking mountain in the middle of nowhere. So,
all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, so this might just be the basis for a future fishing trip if we can get the logistics right.
All right, yeah, we'll see if we can rub off on you in terms of, well, maybe that's some bad wording, but like in terms of libertarian ideals, when you get talking about a fishing trip with a bunch of guys, I'm like, maybe
you tend to go with when you're on a fishing trip. I know from doing float trips down Alaska, you tend to agree with the pack because there's you want to eat at the end of the day. So
there you go.
Psychology there. That's interesting. Yeah.
Listen, guys, I got to bounce in a sec, but any last questions you want to address? Should people you're gonna throw in a link to the book, or how do you want to?
Heck yeah! I mean, I'm about to bring it up on stage. Here we go. So this is his website, paulgreenberg.org. The book is a third term. Trying to click on it. It's trying to load.
There you go. That should do it.
There we go. Yeah, y'all got any more questions for Paul before he bounces out of here?
What's your favorite species of fish to fish for?
I've had only limited ability to do so, but I quite love California yellowtail. And the only time I ever fished for them, I was working with my brother on a TV show, and Hollywood's motto is "hurry up and wait," and so I chose to wait on offshore fishing boats. And I did this amazing trip to the Channel Islands, where we were fishing live squid for yellowtail, and it just was pound for pound the hardest fighting fish, and then fork for fork the most delicious tasting. So
I've not done a lot of pelagic fishing that's offshore stuff.
You have not, or you have?
Not a ton, just a little bit. I was, grew up super, I don't know, poor, I guess, and so I didn't have a boat,
Yeah, I've always the rivers and lakes around here. The biggest I've done is 2 summers ago, Lake Michigan.
Oh, nice. Go for salmon.
On Lake Michigan. Yeah, that was fun.
So we do have a question from the audience, real quick.
Oh yeah, sure.
Nice, yeah.
I think he's referring to your being a proponent of democracy. He says, if most of us are dumb, why should we all vote?
Well, Washington would certainly agree with that. There were property requirements and so forth at the beginning of the government. All I can say to that, it's a great question. It's certainly catches your attention. What I think, rather than saying those dumb people shouldn't vote, let's maybe perhaps get more civics into American classrooms and people to understand about how government actually works. I think there's it's like I have a bit about science in one of my books, where the public thinks that science is if science says this is the way it is, that's the way it is, and then when science changes its mind, they're like, whoa, science doesn't know what it's talking about. But science is actually a process. It's a discussion, and it's an argument, and different ideas and concepts win out over time. Government is the same way, and this whole kind of very short-term gotcha mentality. I voted before this, after I voted against it. That kind of, without having a bigger picture of how government actually works. I would like to see more of that, and perhaps a few less dumb people getting smart, or a few more dumb people getting smart.
I was to say,
I would like that as well. I would also say that I think the libertarian idea of government getting smaller means you have to learn less about government. And so
I was going to make the same comment. Like, if you simplify it, it's less to know. That's so funny. We think alike.
Fair enough.
That's too funny.
And Buddy rounds it off with just saying, "I am dumb and should not vote."
All right,
that's
good
funny.
Thanks. That's important.
Well, Paul,
Importantness. Yeah.
Paul, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on here. You know, we might not agree on everything, but I like that you're out there. I mean, one of your books, we talked about this a little bit beforehand, just to mention it real quick. One of your books, dadgummit, Goodbye Phone, Hello World. That's one that I'm going to 100% purchase.
That's right. Yes. Well, I quit my iPhone about 8 years ago, and nice. I use a flip phone. And talk about things that you don't need to know. I really don't need to know how the latest version of the iPhone works.
Yeah,
yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I have the equivalent of like an iPhone 4. I think it's like when they basically brought that back, the SE or whatever. So like I have the dumbest smartphone that still works today, kind of thing. So I'm like I've toyed with the idea of getting a clam phone, but there's just a handful of moments where I own
an iPhone adjacent that doesn't have a SIM card in it. That I use when I need to, like sometimes I can't get into my building.
Yeah, right.
Whoops. But anyway, to put a big bracket around the thing is, I'm very much on the page of liberty. Liberty.
You're in good company here, then.
And liberty to not have your brain be colonized by tech. Liberty to have your own ideas and not be shoved down the tube of propaganda. I think hopefully
I would agree with the sentiment of that quite a bit, actually. Yeah.
So, hopefully, some of the listeners will explore those books, and hopefully you guys will too. And if you're in the city at some point, come on by. I can even take you fishing out of Sheepshead Bay.
Nice.
All right. Sheepshead, that's a tasty fish right there.
Yeah, and they're back.
Yeah. Have you ever fished for a snook? Oh, my bad. I didn't know you had to go. I was going to say that was my favorite fish to fight, is like pound for pound inshore is, I feel like, snook, like inshore.
Well, just a point, Sheepshead Bay was named for Sheepshead for the fish that used to be in Sheepshead Bay. They were fished out, but they've recently started to return. So,
okay, interesting.
Never say never.
Yeah, fish trivia.
Yep.
All right,
guys.
Nice
to see you.
Have
Bye.
a good night.
Thanks, Paul. Bye. All right, everybody. That was Paul Greenberg. You can go check out his books, paulgreenberg.org. What do y'all say we do a little reset and maybe start from the beginning of our... I didn't know if he was going to respond, just everybody out there.
Right.
He responded about an hour and a half before the show. We thought he may have ghosted us.
We're going to start with what are we drinking? And
we're going to start with our first story of the night here in just a second. But Alden, what are you drinking?
I have it was a very tall gin and juice in a libations glass here, and a Founder's Breakfast Stout, which they don't go together as well as you would think, but each individually are great. So
I don't think they'd go together at all.
These are what I had this week, so I don't even care.
Nick, what are you drinking, man?
I've already polished off a Yingling Black and Tan and an Icy Light.
There we go.
The Yingling Black and Tans are actually not bad.
I like them.
Okay.
The Yingling, all of the like variants that Yingling spits out, they're worth a try. Actually, I kind of like them.
All right.
Yeah, the regular Yingling's good, but they're also their specialty ones are the seasonal ones, things like that. They make some pretty good ones.
I think they do a pretty good job with there's a lot of those like bigger brewers that like they'll do the seasonal stuff and the specialty things that I'm like, I'm not into, but I think Yingling does a pretty good job with theirs.
Zach, what are you drinking, man?
Yeah,
I have a Terrapin Imperial Hopsecutioner.
Oh, okay.
Good Lord.
It's
9.8
alcohol, so
there we go.
It's the closest thing I can get to drugs.
I'm drinking Ardbeg 10 year. They were out of Wee Beastie.
How does that compare?
I like the Wee Beastie better. The Wee Beastie's 5 years old. This is 10, and it's.
I have said seriously before it's the best 5-year Scotch I've ever had. I think it
better than
so
a lot of 10-year Scotches.
It's insane. I think for $50, or I mean, on average, about that, it's like the pound for pound, dollar for dollar, the best Scotch I can find, basically.
All right,
I like how you know so much about this, and then most of the time on the show, you're just like, I'm lapping tequila out of a dog bowl today.
I'm broke. I get a Scotch for my birthday. Like I bought paint. I went to Home Depot 4 fucking times in 5 days. Since I talked to you, Jake, I had to go back to Home Depot.
Good.
Since I talked to you today.
You know what I did this week? I bought dirt.
I need to buy gravel soon. So
there's dirt right outside your house, man.
Yeah, but I don't have anywhere to dig it up to make it, and also it's clay as soon as you get down. So I put some raised. I was putting some raised beds in, and my dad brought like 10 buckets worth of dirt from his dirt pile, and we filled up. And we dumped a little bit to see how much it was, and it was like barely anything in the first bed.
10 buckets.
So I'm like, all right. It's time to order dirt. So
ordering dirt's funny. Okay, we have one thing to promote. It's from one of our Dollar Media Club members, Mitch. There is a ballot access signature petitioning drive this Saturday, May 17th at 4 p.m. 28 South Wall Street in Cartersville, Georgia. Ballot access is a big problem in the state of Georgia. We're ranked 50th out of 50 states for ballot access laws.
Is it really?
Yeah, the Libertarian Party can no longer. New York, but it's crazy, man. Libertarian Party is no longer going to be included on certain ballots across the state, and so this is a ballot access signature petition that will help to get our ballot access back in the state of Georgia.
I wish Georgia didn't suck to that, because now I live here.
So it looks like it's a mellow mushroom. So people know they got there.
Is it a mellow mushroom? All right.
Yeah.
Mellow Mushroom, everybody. Go meet at Mellow Mushroom in Cartersville, 28 South Wall Street at 4 p.m. on Saturday. There'll be a bunch of other folks there. Mitch says, y'all come hang out.
Enjoy a Mellow Mushroom.
Dude, Mellow Mushroom has, for a chain, it has phenomenal pizza.
Like, they got some interesting stuff there. It's a nice little place. My parents liked it when they'd come visit. They'd be like, what are we going to get? And it's like, let's just go to the Mellow Mushroom.
Yeah. They have,
I used to go there.
If you have to eat gluten-free, they have the best gluten-free pizza I've ever had in my life.
It's a chain from Atlanta, though. So I guess it's somewhat.
Yeah. It's kind of a local thing. I mean, you catch it across the South. Like, did a family trip to Asheville at one point, and like we all went. I met everyone there because they were there before me. But
I had no idea it was a Georgia thing.
It's not up here.
Yeah,
like Fellini's, I guess, is a chain too, and I love it. It's an Atlanta thing.
That place is great too.
What place?
Fellini's. Yeah, it's so good.
What the hell that is?
Yeah, it's
Fellini's or Paulinis?
Yeah, Felinis.
Fellini's. I've never heard of that. I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not familiar.
All right, Zach. Let's get into our first topic of the night. Go ahead and pull it up.
Fellini's was our first
Bitcoin.
Yeah, hit play on this Coinbase commercial that hits every libertarian right in the soft spot.
If a Bitcoin was the size of a quarter, all 21 million of them would fit inside a single shipping container. But to fit the dollars the Fed prints on average every day, you'd need 72 shipping containers.
Wow.
Each year, you'd need 26,280 containers. And to fit what they've printed in the last decade, well, you'd need a lot more than that.
So that is an advertisement from Coinbase. It's their latest ad, and I've never seen them put out just a Bitcoin.
I'm rolling my eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm rolling my eyes that it's Coinbase to put that out.
Yes, their message is perfect. Okay, their message is spot on.
Right, I'm just responding to the message.
The fact that they deal mostly in shit coins leads you to believe that they don't actually believe in the message that they're putting out there. And they also have some very suspect practices. Like I know that Michael Saylor, who's one of the biggest Bitcoiners on earth, owns MicroStrategy or Strategy B. They have a custody agreement. So all of the custody of the Bitcoin that Strategy B owns is kept in Coinbase, which is wild, because just recently there was the fact that you don't own your own currency, you don't own your own Bitcoin through buying, like through being an investor in Strategy B, means that it's not your money. Like you don't.
What is Strategy B?
It's MicroStrategy. He renamed it.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
It's his company. Yeah, he renamed it Strategy B. B is a little like looks like an
Bitcoin.
I own
exponential.
stock in it. I didn't know that though.
Yeah, well, the stock symbol stayed the same, MSTR.
Jake, I
yeah.
fixed it.
M-Star.
I made my name lowercase, and so now it's not a stupid small caps. They're all the same size.
Alden,
I found a
a
loophole
this-
to work
Alden,
around your
this
stupid
whole
font.
show, I was only thinking about the font and what your thoughts on, and how is Alden
It's-
gonna fix this?
It's been upsetting me for the last 45 minutes.
I don't notice the issue.
Alden, your brain, man. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But, yeah,
That's
back
your-
to-
All right, carry
back
on, carry on.
Well, the somewhat of Coinbase's credit, while they're out there profiting off pushing the latest shit coins, when the strategic reserve thing started popping up more, Brian Armstrong, the CEO, did come out and was like, the only asset that really makes sense is Bitcoin. So it tells you that they understand, or at least he understands what it is, but he's just like, out there. Yeah, let's anyone who wants to pay me the money to list their shitcoin project and pump and dump and whatever, just all right, I'll make money off of it. So I mean, it's that. And then I think I saw today Coinbase also got hit with some sort of social engineering attack or something and lost a bunch of user and got a bunch of user data swiped or something.
They got it swiped and now it's being held for ransom for $20 million. So
100
Nice.
billion.
Yeah.
So
Coinbase
who changed my name?
what? I didn't. Oh,
It was Zach. Okay. Zach, how long did it take me to notice it from the point you changed it?
Not long, like 3 seconds.
He changed the N to a capital and it grew like a millimeter, and 3 seconds, and I was like, fuck that, I gotta change it.
I didn't notice it.
That's
No
so
one else
funny.
would.
I didn't
Yeah.
notice it either. I was wondering why you were laughing. I was like, Nick's not making.
I
a
know, I
funny
had to
point
explain
right
it.
now.
Because to me, it was so obvious what happened, and no one said anything. I was like, oh, okay, I'm the only one that saw it.
That's great.
Alden, his designer and font stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
y'all, if you didn't know, Bitcoin reclaims 100K for the first time since January, which was the first time that it hit 100K to begin with. It's on the rise. And I don't know at this point in time, look, I think 2 to 3% of the world has adopted Bitcoin in some way, shape, or form. And if you're not understanding how much better of a store of value of your labor it is than the dollar or any other currency that can be printed, please go read a book. Please read the Bitcoin Standard. Please read Fiat Standard. Please read Creature from Jekyll Island. Understand that what the Federal Reserve is doing to you is stealing your money. They're counterfeiting the money that you have to make more of it. And it devalues every single hour of work that you do.
And they don't care that it devalues because they're the ones printing it. And then with the system that they have where they just loan it out and loan it out and loan it out and make interest, it doesn't matter. But then if you have it stashed and saved, it depreciates. And so it doesn't hurt them as much as it hurts you. And so they don't care. Like,
yes, for the love of God, if you're not going to spend in Bitcoin, just make a savings account that is Bitcoin. Like,
honestly, do you have a graph of like if you
with the
account
meme,
for
right?
inflation?
Can you see it?
No, no one's gonna be able to see it.
No.
All right. Well, it's the
not there
whatever
anymore.
the anime version of the Star Wars Rogue One.
The
thing.
Ghibli version. Come on.
Yeah, whatever it is, and it says so. You save in Bitcoin and focus on your craft. And there's
You say Ghibli? I've been saying Ghibli for like.
It's a
30
peaceful
years.
life.
I think you're right, actually.
So-
I don't
Oh,
know.
okay. I was like, I've been watching
So-
Ghibli shit for so long.
All right, hang on. Too much talking over each other. Alden, what were you saying just before that?
I have no idea.
Okay, Zach, were you saying something just before that?
No, just yelling at Nick.
Okay, everybody stop talking over each other.
I was just saying save in Bitcoin and focus on your craft, and it's a
There we
piece.
go.
Oh, I was saying, do you have a graph of like over the past just like 10 years, how much Bitcoin has increased in value versus the dollar? Because it would be like an X, like the dollar is just dropping.
So I have a better demonstration of that. Give me a second to pull it up. Y'all
Sure,
keep
yeah.
talking about Bitcoin.
Because if you're talking about savings,
I mean, there's Bitcoin
no
to
point in
dollar.
saving dollars
Because it's
that
priced
much.
in dollars. So,
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know if
Yeah.
that describes what you were looking for, though.
Hang on, I've got.
Well, that individually, that's half of the equation, but yeah, just the comparison.
All right,
It's,
I'm pulling it up right now. It's not exactly what you were wanting, but it's close. Okay, so here's graph
Any
number
visual
one.
just to help with, yeah.
Here's graph number one. I
Mhm.
gotta remove Nick's or Zach's real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the average home cost. Okay, so back in,
Mhm.
oh, let me zoom in. 1963, the average home cost was $19,600. Okay, and then you can just see it perpetually going up. It goes down a couple times. There's little tiny waves, but it perpetually goes up, 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 up.
Mhm.
In 1980, it was $80,000, and then in 2023, the average home price was $492,000 in the United
That's
States.
the average?
That's the average.
God.
that's just
And
stupid.
that's it's insane. And so if you go over to, share a different window. Since the
That's wild that
creation,
that's the
since
average.
the inception of Bitcoin, originally in 2012, a house cost 50,616 Bitcoin. In the year 2024, it costs 5 Bitcoin. So,
That's funny.
mind you, Bitcoin's only been around since 2009, so it's not
Right, yeah.
tested for decades and decades. But the fact that the dollar has been tested for over a century and it continues to get inflated and the value of it continues to go down should lead you to conclude that it is not a safe store
There's a
of value.
historical precedent here for not trusting it
Well,
as savings,
when-
but
depending on what point you look at the dollar from, right? So, I mean, yeah, you could look at it from the start, but it probably makes more sense looking at it from either the inception of the Federal Reserve or from 1971 when Nixon took
this
us
is the
off.
gold standard.
I generally go from 1913, the inception of the Federal Reserve,
Yeah,
because before
because that-
there was a few different kinds of dollars before that, and
Yeah,
it
we're not
wasn't
talking about
always the same.
greenbacks or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I would
Well,
say
I mean,
Federal
you
Reserve.
gotta look
yeah.
at that point. The dollar up until well,
The modern
what
system
say
that we have now.
Roosevelt up until FDR, you were looking at the dollar being pegged to whatever an ounce was $20 or something, and then what Roosevelt confiscated all the gold through
Yeah.
executive order and turned it into I think it was $1 for like 30. It was like 35 ounces, $35 per ounce or something.
Yeah.
And so you can see from there. Now you look, what are we at per ounce on gold now? 2,000,
3,000.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that a great example of how if you ignored the government and did civil disobedience, you profited?
massively? You
Yeah, and
profited
that's
massively. Low time
100%.
preference was there.
And that's another thing. Like, if you're not digitally inclined, if you are not somebody who has a phone or understands how to use the internet, then
If you're Paul,
either
How are you watching
learn
this?
Bitcoin. Yeah, how are you watching this, first of all? But learn Bitcoin,
Yeah.
learn how to do it. It's not that difficult. It's extremely simple to transact in Bitcoin. Or store gold is a phenomenal store of value. Like
Ron
absolutely
Swanson would
phenomenal.
agree.
Like me and Nikki bought gold a year and a half ago. We bought 4 ounces. We sold 3 ounces for the same price we bought 4 ounces for this year. So like within a
Mhm.
year, it increased 25%.
25%. Yeah.
That's alchemy. you turned nothing into gold.
I've never heard that. That's hilarious.
That's perfect.
Look at this. Jake beating out Isaac Newton.
There we go. Well, y'all, basically my point is just rethink what you know about the dollar, about savings, about the stock market, about shit coins. Bitcoin is digital gold, and
gold is physical gold.
It's not too late.
Analog.
Yeah, there you go.
$100,000 for Bitcoin, you're not too late. It's going to go much higher than this. So you have plenty of time, and it will still be a good store of value for centuries.
Good night, Grumpy.
So, good night, Grumpy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's.
We can always go to one Satoshi being worth a lot.
Yes, and that's exactly right, man. My whole thing with Bitcoin, other than the fact that it is the currency that will be used in the future, is that they should have named the largest amount a Satoshi and called the smallest amount of Bitcoin.
You know, there's a BIP to change the reference turning the Satoshi into a Bitcoin.
I'm okay with the term Sats though, but it's already so ingrained. It's just going to be hard to change that.
It's changing it.
But then again, most people don't know about Bitcoin. So,
but I will say
that's true.
When I have approached people who don't know about Bitcoin about it, and they look at the price of one Bitcoin, they freak out because they're like, I can't afford that. And like even trying to explain to them that there are decimal places it doesn't get them over the fact that the price of a Bitcoin is enormous right now.
But it's like gold. I mean, an ounce of gold is 2,000, but I have this tiny little gram of gold.
There you go.
It's the same as like stocks, where it's like if the price of the stock goes up, like instead of buying 600 units of stock, you buy 60. You know, like you just buy a different
dollars
amount
and cents, right? You know, you have dollars and then you have cents. It's just 8 decimal places versus 2.
That's what I try to explain to people.
But I think people don't like the idea of never being able to own a full dollar. So really, it's more like $1 million and dollars or something.
Yeah. It'd be like, how many shares of Coca-Cola do you have? And you're like 0.000025 shares. Like it's weird.
I own a Coke.
I have 1 can of Coke, and that's what I've got. Yeah.
All right, y'all. We're gonna move on to the next topic. I just wanted to note that Bitcoin hit
diversity
100K this week yet again.
Diversity is our strength.
All right. Well, let's go see if this Irishman agrees. Zach.
Just wait for the mic to get you. Yep. Thank you very much. And I'd just like to add, I understand there's obligations, legal obligations for the country to take in migrants. I'm a product and a beneficiary of coming to this country as a migrant. And Ireland is very diverse and very welcoming, which is fantastic.
Wait, I'm going to pause it here for a second. Before we continue, being diverse isn't a benefit. It's not good being diverse. People need to stop believing this whole diversity is good narrative. Diversity is not good. Communities that are diverse do a lot worse than communities that are all similar, which if you spend 2 minutes think about, you can understand why. Having a community full of differences will never get on and do as well as a community full of people that are similar. Diversity is not good, but we'll continue.
I think we're missing the big piece where there's a bit of social unrest. It's not as a consequence of the Irish people not wanting migrants coming into the country. It's an issue that the existing people in the country are not being taken care of. I think the government needs to do a better job. As we say, take care of the Irish first. I think it's the right of any citizen in their own country to ask to be taken care of first. But the situation we have is that not just from a housing perspective, but as overall on a lot of resources, mental health, different areas that the country needs help on is not getting it. So I suppose my question is, at what point do we put the Irish people first? Because I benefit as a consequence of the help of Irish people, and they also need to be taken care of.
I say that.
Okay.
Okay, we'll
That's
get
another
back to the
shock.
panel with that later. But I want to go now to,
No
I suppose, what's
way.
become a very familiar pattern.
Don't
now.
answer that. We'll get back to it later. But well done to him. He's dressed well, comes across well, and he's saying a message that most of us can agree with. Now, the big thing is diversity is not good. Social unrest happens because diversity is differences. Differences cause friction, and your social capital goes down. Best communities are homogenous communities, communities full of people who are basically the same.
All right. So this is obviously a very touchy topic these days because the diversity has been hailed as like the holy grail of things that we should try to achieve. And, you know, on this show, we're not all that diverse as far as, you know, certain characteristics. However,
We
we
got
do
a
have
Polish guy.
we do have a Polish guy. We have a guy with a crazy name, so that makes us pretty dadgum diverse. But yeah, I don't know. Alden, we chatted about this for a second earlier, and this is one of the reasons
It was
I wanted to
enough
have you on this
to
show.
plant it in my mind, and I.
So, what are your thoughts
fortunately or
on?
unfortunately, I have a
Yeah,
lot to say on this. But
Well, just what are your thoughts on the Irish guy who's commenting on the video, like on his thoughts on it?
in terms of this, like, so if we're defining diversity as more like cultural, racial, you know, more, I don't know, what commonly comes to mind as diversity now, I would say there's a like a ratio of diversity that is like peak beneficial. And I would say, in his defense, to start there, I guess, before I start to kind of pick it apart, there is a point where there is too diverse per like a rate across time. So like if you get too diverse too quickly, there's like studies on this where you know, if you have an influx of people that, you know, have different beliefs or speak a different language or you know, whatever it is, a community won't adjust enough to, and you know, it won't go as well. And there's economically even and socially there's friction point issues with this, like if it gets too different too quickly. So the other factor is time, like how long does it take to integrate this? But I'm trying not to, like, I don't want to spin out too far on this yet if you wanted to dive back in, but there is like a level where it can get too much. Before I redefine diversity, even just staying within this sort of understanding of it, there's, I'm not sure. So I'm wanting to just like spin out into my whole thing. So if Jake, if you wanted to jump back in, I think now's a good time to stop me here. But, oh, Jake, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. I'll jump back in real quick. And like, first off, I'm definitely not trying to virtue signal, but I don't believe that diversity is bad. I think that too much diversity is 100% problematic. I think it depends on the type of diversity you're talking about. Like, just because people are different races does not mean that they are diverse in thought, you know. Just because people,
so this is redefining diversity a little bit though, based on like
correct.
other
but
factors,
like,
yeah.
what I think what I think he's mostly commenting on, because if you have been paying attention to the news, which Alden, I know you haven't, so
no, I don't.
The stuff that's going on in Ireland is pretty horrific, and they're basically welcoming in a whole bunch of people who believe the opposite of what they believe. It's a whole bunch of immigrants and refugees that they're welcoming in that are now changing their society and wreaking havoc on the population. And so what he's talking about isn't a racial thing. It's more of a cultural and like faith-based diversity. And
I feel like faith and oh, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that I think I think maybe this is getting towards what you're getting at, but it's not the quote unquote diversity, but it's kind of the vision or shared purpose of a community or an organization or a group. You know, having different perspectives, different backgrounds can, help, overcome some issues, or, just provide a different perspective when you're working through things. But if you're
Purpose or goals are, I
yeah,
think, really critical in
but
understanding the benefit of diversity or not. Yeah.
right. So if you're looking at Ireland, a majority, a white Catholic, majority Catholic nation historically, and then you're bringing in, people from third world war torn countries of different religions and dumping them into neighborhoods and that, that kind of that creates that friction, I think. And especially if then it's also, oh well, we're going to tax you and we're going to give your money to these new people, and who cares, go screw yourself. That creates friction because there's not a shared purpose or a shared goal. People, the people moving there aren't necessarily moving there because, hey, I see I have a shared vision or some shared outlook, perspective, some shared goals to live as they do. It's just, well, I'm going to live my way over here, you're going to pay for, you come live your way over here and we're going to pay you for it. And that's where I think a lot of friction comes in on that, I think.
So when whatever the Irish guy was talking, he's like, oh, communities do better when there's less diversity. Again, across time, you got to think about this kind of differently. If you just measure it right now, sure, I'm not going to like disagree with that, like statistically or whatever. But if you never integrate, now you have this community here that doesn't know anything about this community here, that doesn't know anything about this community here. And then there's a time bomb later where
Correct.
if you slowly are integrating a little bit all the time, you prevent that. It's like battle versus war. Like it's a whole different thing. And so if you're only focused on the right now, you can sort of quote something out of context and say like, oh, it's going well today in this community, but then give it 40 years and you got a fucking war. Like it's not the best. This is rigidity. This is a lack of flexibility to the point of it being a downfall. This is where I'm going to spin off into Crazy Town. So the like rigidity is the fault of a conservative-minded person. And when I say conservative, I don't necessarily mean politically right-leaning or whatever. I mean like in the whatever, like Jordan Peterson would talk about, like a liberal-minded and conservative-minded, open-minded and more fixed-minded. Yeah, well, right, and psychologically more conservative. The cautious, the what is the whole thing of like the, what's this wall? And then like the conservative person would be like, well, don't tear the wall down until we know what it is. Is this like Ben Shapiro's thing or whatever? I don't know. Anyway, like
it's older than Ben.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
what?
That's
he's been saying it, but I don't know who said it originally or whatever.
That was like, that English guy.
That English guy, yeah, of course, right, obviously.
How
Winston
am I
Churchill
blanking on
I
his
don't
name?
know.
No, it wasn't Winston Churchill.
I'm kidding. But but that's like conservative as a thinker. But if you have, again, if you have only a community of conservative thinkers, then you have a community that never changes, never adjusts, never adapts. That's maladaptive from that side of you. And you can basically be rigid to the point of never adapting, never changing to environments as they are changing and as threats evolve and things like that. And you can die. There are species even that we've documented that it's a niche evolution, that they get too specifically adapted to one thing, and then they can't adapt quick enough when their environment changes. It's not good. Then if you have the too open-minded, then the risk of that is chaos. Like the risk of the opposite of rigidity is that there's too much motion. There's not enough motion, or there's too much motion. And so this is again a diversity in thought pattern, basically.
Yeah.
But if you
can I jump in real quick?
Yeah. Go for it.
Cool.
G.K. Chesterton was the was
Chesterton. There we
offensive.
go. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was
Um,
bothering me.
yeah, and I think what the biggest complaint. So I've been following what's going on in Ireland for a while, and I think their biggest issue is that a large percentage of the Irish people want the stem of these, want the flow of all these immigrants and all these people who believe something completely different than them to at least be like slowed down to very,
Curtailed.
very little.
Yeah.
Because I think in general, most people are okay with helping people who actually need it. Like if someone has their life legitimately threatened, I think most people would accept that person into their little community, at least for a little while, until wherever they're from
Like, would you let
settles
someone
down.
sleep on your couch for like a week or a month? But like 20 years is a long time to ask.
20 years and not acclimating to anything
Your
about
house
your
rules, like-
society.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
If I run a house, or if me and Nikki have our house up here and we invite somebody who's just going to, basically use all of our power at all times of the night when we don't have power because we get our power from the sun, that's not going to work out well. Like
Right,
there's going
yeah.
to be massive conflict between me and that person.
Right.
And so like what's going on in Ireland is basically people are bringing their culture, not adapting at all to Irish culture.
But
And
again,
then-
this is the rate across time
Correct.
too. It's too
Yeah.
steep as a rate.
Yes.
But but to say that the other is then truth, where no change, no adjustment, no adapting, no integrating is then a pro, that's a ticking time bomb, and in its own
Completely
right
agree.
is equally bad, just on a different time scale.
Completely agree.
I came up with an analogy earlier today that I was thinking
Nice.
about this while driving to Home Depot to get paint. But I was thinking in terms of music. And so if you have, like, say, there's a couple ways to think about this. If you have no diversity in instrument, if you have just like 8 people playing guitar, it's sometimes, people can pull things off like this, like an a cappella group comes to mind or something where it's like all just the same instrument or whatever. But usually that's not a band. Usually we have diversity in an aspect, right? So this is maybe say, it can be diverse in one way, but what Nick was saying earlier about like purpose or goal, it's like, okay, but we got together, we're playing this style of music. Like if you get someone that's like, I'm playing jazz and you're playing metal and like you're folksy and like this isn't gonna work, you know what I mean? So
it's still just jazz.
Yeah,
that is kind of just jazz.
It's just noise. But so now we've kind of isolated, there's elements where it's like some things can change while others are fixed, but even within this, if you dive into one element, so like the style influence or genre of music or whatever, some of my favorite bands over the years have been ones that bend and integrate and push like different, like Rage Against the Machine, which was like metal and rap influence or whatever in a way, but it wasn't so much that it like tore itself apart. It worked. It was like that right ratio of sound that made something, or like Red Hot Chili Peppers was like, kind of like funk and rock and, bringing in different things. And there's a ton of different, the Beatles even were like doing like kind of an East and West thing in their later years or whatever. A certain amount of change is good, but if you do to the point where it's like, we want to be both, yacht rock and metal at the same time, that's not going to work. Like maybe 100 years goes by and you evolve to that point, but it's knowing that like right friction point. And I think my last little thing I'll say on this is Maynard Keenan of Tool, probably my favorite band, has talked about the friction point before in just 100 things, whether it's music or otherwise. And when something is too easy, it usually sucks. And without that struggle in life in general, that's what makes things worth it. And like a grape that struggles and isn't given the exact, perfect amount of water that it needs to be, plump and lush all the time or whatever, it actually develops like different characteristics. Or, he talked about like when you're making a cello and they've got to like bend the wood to get that tension in the wood for the tone.
Yeah.
If you bend too much, it'll break. But if you don't bend it at all, then there is no resonance to it, and there's no tonal quality that's, pleasing to the ear at all. And so it's just finding that right ratio of friction. And I imagine that this is something that like the Mandelbrot system or like the organic geometry would probably touch on in terms of like the, golden ratios and different like things like that. And nature always has a way of like balancing itself out. And they've done studies on this with like populations of like rabbits on some island or whatever, and it's like it gets too much and then the rabbits stop breeding, and then it gets too low and they start breeding. It's crazy like how things just know to find that right point.
Wasn't that with foxes? Like
it's anything. It's just
well, it was rabbits and foxes where the rabbits would explode, so the fox population would explode, which would take out the rabbit population, and the fox population would decrease, and you kind of get this. Yeah,
and if it doesn't adjust or adapt, that's when it's bad. Or if it changes too wildly, then it's bad. Yeah. Anyway,
I think the lesson to be learned here is that government ruins everything, and they're either letting in too many people or not keeping out enough people. Like it's
yeah,
it basically
flood, drought.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just let nature do its thing. If we need to burn some witches in the process, that's so be it. That's what happens when too many witches come to your town.
Stick that on a t-shirt in the store.
If we need to burn some witches. Burn the Witch is another good song. Queens of
I don't know. Zach, you got any opinions on diversity in this regard?
Yeah, I just think you hit on it earlier. It's just, a common value system is more important than what people look like or sound like or what their last name is. I'd rather live next to.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, I'd rather live next to, like a fresh off the boat Nigerian Christian who, we're probably on the same page than like an Antifa member who wants to tear down capitalism and, hates children and stuff like that. Like,
but they might be white.
Even though one of them probably looks just like me. But
yeah, right.
I'm picturing this scenario. That's the best.
The Nigerian immigrants are one of the more successful groups when they immigrate to the U.S.
Yeah.
Really?
Chose them.
Yeah.
Nigeria comes from a Bitcoin background too, so yeah.
But yeah, we've made too much about the topical diversity and not the sort of 100%. Underpinnings of personality, how you think and what you believe and what drives you as a person and like things that you build community on. And I think that the topical stuff is more correlation, not causation, I would argue.
Dude,
as far as like just people looking alike and being like, oh, look, we're getting along. But it's like, but that's not what it's about.
The problem there is if I would have said, like I want to live next to, I said I want to live next to a Nigerian and that's fine. But if it's like, I don't want to live next to like a Haitian who barbecues cats or something, then, race comes into it when that's not what I meant. Like, I mean
a person that barbecues cats, like,
yeah.
But just
that's not a common value set, right?
Yeah, that's the most important thing to me is not what somebody looks like, but that, we jive.
I want to come home to a living cat. Like, yeah,
basically.
All right. Well, this leads perfectly into our next topic.
I am not fucking drunk.
Well, 19th are blue.
Every pretty girl deserves to go to a ball.
This is everything about it's a clam. I love it.
I gotta be honest with you, I feel like I'm a little bit too drunk to stand up.
On Wiedersehen, asshole.
I'm drunk right now.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Drunkard of the Week. This is a 3-minute one, so apologies for the talking down that you're about to hear, but it is what it is. So enjoy.
This video is for the white Afrikaners who are coming to the United States. I think you've already landed here. And I know that some of the folks who met you at the airport told you, welcome, we're so glad you're here. Most of us aren't glad you're here, okay? We don't want you here. We never wanted you here. And furthermore, I noticed they're gonna settle you in Idaho, Ohio, and North Carolina. I will tell you they're not our finest states. So
Those are great states.
they're a good fit for you.
Except
I
Ohio.
understand that many of you are farmers,
doesn't
and I've
exist,
seen
so.
a lot of people say, "Oh, that's great. We need more farmers." Sorry to say, we don't. We actually need farm workers because we've deported most of them. So if you can, put your picking hat on and think about, picking produce, that's largely probably what you're going to be doing here, because I hear you don't have a lot of skills. I would also say that you're not going to have to hold just one job, but probably 2 or 3 to make up for your quality of life that you had back in South Africa. There'll be no servants working for $2 a day. There's none of that here. So you're the servant who's working for $2 a day. So enjoy that. You're gonna have to pay for your health care, and ordinarily, because you're a refugee who's being discriminated against, you would go on Medicaid. But guess what? The Republicans just cut Medicaid. So I don't think you're going to have that option for healthcare. So maybe you'll do without. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. I did notice that the Episcopalian Church had a program with the government where they would, they would resettle and help, refugees resettle. They find you all to be so onerous, they terminated the partnership with the government. And they said, yeah, we won't be resettling those folks. Other things that you need to know about. While we are 58% white here in the United States, that's not going to last much longer. Within the next couple of years, we're going to be the minority, which will be fun for you because that's what you're used to. Interestingly enough, we have a ton of Latinos. We're the 2nd largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. So for you, if you could stop speaking that dirty, guttural, whatever it is, German, French, Dutch thing that you speak, that Afrikaans, nobody wants to hear that shit. So you can speak English or you can speak Spanish, which is really the 2nd language here. In terms of other things that you need to know about, the Black people in this country, they don't get fucked with, okay? I know that there's a long legacy of colonialism and all kinds of stuff happening in your country, but our Black folks have sort of been through the fire, if you will, and they're not going to be fucked with. So you're the minority here. Enjoy. I really hope you like your time here. I'm going to bet my ass that you're going to be booking it back to SA probably within the next 12 months. Have a great day.
I'm not as think as you drunk I am.
Worst part about that is she said 12 months and not a year.
I said it in the Discord. I'm going to say it here. Why do they always talk like that?
Dude, that is such a good question. I do not understand. Some quack says, holy crap, dude.
Yeah.
But he says they speak poor white people. They speak to poor white people like we used to talk about recently freed slaves.
I'm just proud of everybody for getting their pronoun right, because that's definitely a they.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was referring to all these people that talk like that, do this kind of thing, but
you were just being progressive. We get you.
Yeah, look at you, big progressive. Good job,
Their
Nick.
tone of voice was so just irksome.
Just
they could have been giving me a recipe for a fucking Apfelkuchen, and like I don't want to hear it.
It's just like what I find wild is the amount of like anti-white racism from white people happening in America is
kind of weird,
bonkers. Like,
yeah.
I wonder if they took any time to actually research what's happening in South Africa. Probably not. If y'all want a visual
or the history of South Africa,
that was just real racism based on skin color.
Yeah, and so
the true apartheid.
If everybody actually needs to see, so across for every white Christian farmer killed in South Africa, this is a video, and if you're just listening to this, it is thousands of white crosses next to the highway that lead into the city, and they put one up every time a white Christian farmer is killed, and I mean it's thousands and thousands and thousands of these people have been murdered just solely because they're white and Christian.
And a farmer.
Well, and landowner.
Yeah.
It's this commie redistribute bullshit coming from the ANC, which has always been a bunch of commies.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they sing that song at their rallies, like "Kill the Boer," which
the whole
basically means white farmer.
And then when you point that out, it's always well, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
Grok was saying that. It's like, well, it's not necessarily an incitement to violence, but like if
They
you
don't
said it
actually
about anyone
mean
else,
kill the boar.
Yeah, yeah. Just like from the river to the sea doesn't mean what everybody says it doesn't mean. Yeah, it's absurd, and I don't understand why they talk like this either. It's so condescending and so childish and like superior.
It is very elitist.
It's extremely
Mm.
elitist, and
It's snarky as fuck, and it begs a slap.
It
I mean, it's just
beg a slap.
in their worldview, white people are at the top of the oppression, hierarchy or whatever.
No matter where
and
they are, too. Yeah.
It doesn't matter, if you're some poor peasant in Siberia or you're, getting killed in South Africa, it doesn't matter because your skin color is a certain color. So we don't want you. We don't like you by our worldview.
Mm.
Yep. It's extremely sad, and it's a horrible way to go through life thinking that way. And it will only lead you to destruction and hatred and anger and bitterness. And it's just very sad. I kind of pity.
You don't see happy progressives like this. They're always angry and bitter.
It does feel like it's rooted in anger. I feel like I'm channeling Yoda at this point, but like,
yes,
yeah. But it does feel like the root emotion of this is like is spicy, and it just is coming from a bad place. But it's hard to have a conversation with someone that I feel that like.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zane.
They always love to have large, complicated glasses too.
The thickest frames. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were saying the glass. I totally forgot what the person looked like when we were talking. I literally thought you meant like a large glass. I was like,
oh,
all right, can't have a schooner. I guess that's like weird.
That's hilarious.
I'm gonna show up with like a fishbowl margarita next episode. Yes, so I hear you though. The large framed glasses, yes.
That's so funny. So yeah, that was our drunkard of the week. I have no idea what her name was. I just called her Bleeding Heart Liberal because that's exactly what she's supposed to be.
Bitch.
I mean, you can substitute her with any progressive, and it's kind of the same thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's
Her
just
name was
funny.
James Oliver.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting conversation to have. I mean, he would just default to the libertarian position. No, he wouldn't. I don't know what he would say in this regard. That is such a good question. Yeah.
My general question and concern about just like this type of person and the attitude and just like that feeling and when you talk and just like giving off that same like that kind of just vibe is I feel like the only people that are going to want to talk to you are the people that already agree with you. And again, I'm calling back up the diversity thing real quick, just to kind of say like that is not a good way to like have any level of discourse at all. And I feel like it's just that kind of a bubble mentality kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that in my own lifetime, and Paul thought I was 50, but I'm not quite 50, but it's not that long of a lifetime. It's like 30-ish years. Like I've watched culturally and politically in our own country this kind of swing where when I was younger, it was more the left side of politics that seemed more open and would have that discourse and would be like NPR, like thoughts for your thoughts, and would like talk to anybody, And then now it's like, I feel like the right side is like, yeah, come on the podcast, we'll talk about whatever, grab a beer, fucking shut up, and it doesn't matter. And the left is like, I will only talk to you if you believe this, that, or the other. And like, what? Like that blows my mind that and that more people aren't talking about that. But
to illustrate diversity one more time, would you rather live next to that person guaranteed or any random person from planet Earth?
Oh, I would roll the dice.
I'll roll the dice.
I'll
sure.
roll.
Yeah.
I don't. That person would be the biggest Karen. Like,
oh my
bitching about
gosh,
everything. No.
Yeah. As soon as I brought a white person to my house, she'd be all over me.
Yeah.
Only black people allowed to enter houses.
I mean, luckily, as long as you stay out of major cities, your likelihood of running into these types decreases dramatically.
What if you get a white mailbox? Like,
Oof.
I mean,
yeah.
Ooh, white male.
Male. That's so good. All right. We're going to move on to a problem that we have solved. Zach, go ahead and bring it up, man.
The study reports that the Antarctic ice sheet unexpectedly gained mass between 2021 and 2023, reversing decades of ice loss. Researchers found that it added 108 gigatons of ice per year during this period. Now, to put that in perspective, a gigaton is the same amount of syrup I use on a pancake. I thought we were told that ice caps were supposed to be completely melted by 10 years ago.
There is a 75% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years.
Scientists are baffled by the Antarctic ice growth. I haven't seen climate experts this confused since they tried explaining why they all fly private jets to climate conferences.
Please like, comment, and subscribe.
If you don't follow Wesley Austin, highly recommend. He's a good follow. I don't agree with some of the stuff he says, but he's pretty dang good.
That was entertaining. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we got a bunch of other articles that basically say the same thing. You can just roll right through them, Zach. We don't need to dive into them, but they all basically say the same thing. Antarctica's astonishing rebound. Ice sheet grows for the first time in decades. Basically, it reversed so much of the melting that they've been freaking out about. But you have not heard any of this in the mainstream media or corporate press or whatever you want to call it, because it kind of destroys their climate change narrative. Yeah. So it's just interesting. Google, Buddy says, Google experts shocked, and the results will overload your computer processor. That's so good. The world has also become greener over the past 33 years. In fact, I think the calculation is 25% more green.
I think we have more forests now than almost ever before, at least that we know of.
Parts of the Sahara Desert are becoming green. They're starting to grow trees and grass and all sorts of stuff.
They're bringing in livestock.
I think they're managing that land properly now instead of land management has a lot to do with.
And then wait, hang on. Just read this title. Humans are officially greening the earth. Is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Like, you can't win with these people. If you go greener, they ridicule you and they question it. And if you burn gasoline in your car, they ridicule you and they question it. So, like, what are you supposed to do in this scenario?
I think they literally mean, is that a good thing for our argument? And like, no, it's not. So.
That's funny. It's like if a person plants a tree, okay, the result is you planted a tree. It's a carbon sink. It's green. It's whatever. But it's like, wait, what fucking car do you drive? And it's like, it depends on what car you drive, whether it's a good or a bad thing. Like,
yeah, the whole climate change thing exists to keep a whole bunch of government sponsored, PhDs taking in government grants to promote this narrative. And that's what it's been. And, whatever truth that, humans are having effects in that, there are effects, there are heat island effects. Like I was saying, land management is a big issue in it. A lot of the desertification comes from the fact that
you bring up desertification before,
you dump fertilizer on the land to cover for the fact that you're not putting the nutrients back in the soil,
and clear cut it.
You clear cut and you cut down the trees, and now you don't have any of that, any of the microclimates or anything like that developing. And these small changes on large scales make huge differences in what you see in places. And like I said, with the Sahara Desert, I think you're seeing it green because there's been like a whole project focused on getting plants and managing kind of that southern boundary of the Sahel
process. That's what I was starting to say before with like bringing in livestock. they'll bring in livestock in an area, and basically the poop, the nitrates in the poop or whatever fertilize the soil. They trample it, they like aerate the soil, they eat the little bit of green that's there, and they move them on to the next spot, and they like keep. This is how it used to be more when we let things roam around, and then we kind of got like large scale farming and fences and things like that, and they got a little bit more, stuck. But bringing goats or cows or something into an area that is not as green is like one of the best things that you can do for it, and roam them around or whatever. And
and then you can eat the goats. That's great.
Sure. Yeah. Makes good tacos.
It makes great
Why
tacos.
not?
You follow that up
Yeah.
with chickens behind it, right? The animals, your goats or your cows poop, and then you bring chickens in and they peck through everything and spread everything around and dig up bugs and
scratch it.
These systems exist and they're natural, and you can find ways to to make this, and this and it's kind of been a lost art, or I guess the ease of industrial farming and stuff like that, where you can just throw your tractor down, grab your tractor and just plow everything and then dump chemical fertilizers and just try to squeeze every last bit through these artificial means. You get higher production or per acre or whatever to start with, but that's short-term thinking, high time preference thinking versus a longer term thought on how do I manage this land right, and
with like tier farming and rotating.
Shout out to White Oak Pastures.
Shout out to White Oak Pastures. Heck yeah.
My freezer is full of their stuff right now.
Dude, their stuff's so good.
We like slash and burn so much in this country, and like especially the central, well, not Central America, middle US area, like the farmland. The
place everyone flies over.
Yeah. And
middle America.
Middle America, yeah. And there used to be I forget if it was hundreds or thousands of species of wheat, and now there's like 5 or something. And there used to be so much like cane, like a bamboo style wild grass in North America, that the early settlers were talking about that, like a squirrel could go from like the East Coast to the West Coast and never touch the ground because it could like hop on this like cane grass or whatever. And we just cleared it all because we were like, let's just make it farmland or whatever. And then we wondered why we had the dust bowl, because it was just all flat and no roots and nothing holding it together. Anyway, I think Jake.
And then you eliminated the buffalo, which roamed, wild.
Yep.
And now it's all cow farts are destroying the environment, and it's like the American continent, because remember Buffalo ranged the entire continent. They were east of the Mississippi.
There were Brazilians.
You had elk, east of the Mississippi, natively across that whole range. You're talking about large, these large ungulates, and now ungulates.
An ungulate? What is it?
What they are.
That's any animal. That's any animal that has like the multiple stomach thing to do it. So it's cow. It's cow.
Really?
Deer. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, learned a new word. Ungulate. Interesting.
Ungulate. There you go.
A side note on ungulates: if you're going to eat the trike, you want the first or the second stomach. You don't want to eat the fourth stomach. Is very poopy tasting.
Alden knows this from experience for sure.
Oh hell yeah! It's real farmy, that fourth stomach.
I love that you learned the word ungulate 1 second ago, and you're already giving advice about it. You're like,
oh, but I don't know it, but I eat it. Yeah,
yeah.
That's so funny.
It's like you had all these massive animals roaming the entire, in massive numbers, massive buffalo herds, and now it's too many cows. You gotta eat your lab processed fake meat.
Eat crickets,
and
racist.
The whole thing of like how many, like what's the carbon footprint on like lab grown meat versus just like letting a cow do its thing? And I would bring up another like white pastures thing or whatever, like smaller scale farming versus like this giant mecca farming where you got to truck meat around all over the country, and like they have these cows that they feed corn and they're not eating grass and stuff. That's a whole different thing.
Okay,
but if you just have a cow eating grass, they get it's like, it depends on the region and the the season and how much water it's had or whatever, but it's like 90 to 96% of the water that a cow needs comes from the grass that it eats. Like, it doesn't need that much water. And people are like, oh, it takes so much water. And I'm like, it depends on what style of farming you're doing and where you are. But an almond tree and making almond milk takes way more water than like just raising a cow in the right setting. Anyway, just a whole other thing with the water usage. But
there we go.
I get it.
Well, yeah, let's move on.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh, it just jumps right over. That's so annoying. Okay, got it. Now I know what it does.
Like an answer or something? I didn't even see what was going
on. No, basically, there's these things in. No, it's a production meeting. We'll talk about it.
I didn't say nothing.
So it's not a trivia answer. It's fine.
Welcome everybody to Libations Trivia. Apologies, the internet for the past couple minutes for me has been bad, which is why I haven't been talking very much. So if it goes out, apologies. I will be right back in like 10 seconds. So
that's okay. We'll just rant about ungulates.
There we go. Just talk about ungulates and we'll be okay. Welcome to Libations Trivia. The topics for tonight are this day in history, rushing, and money. Let's
What's money? I don't understand this term.
Turn the volume down a little bit. There we go. That's better for me. I was yelling. The rules.
Oh, money, that thing that you give Home Depot every other day. Yeah, I understand. Now I get it.
There we go. 8 questions, 1 point each. 6 questions, 2 points each. 4 questions, 3 points each. Every contestant answers questions with a whiteboard or piece of paper. Each member of the audience can answer 1 time. That has been changed. The audience gets a collective 1 answer, and it's the first non-joke answer that they put forth.
Okay.
If you blurt out an answer, you lose a point, and the winner is no longer a loser. So that means all of y'all are freaking losers.
So it's possible to get negative points.
It's possible to get negative points, and we have yet to have somebody to do that. But I'm certain now Zach is going to try.
Blurt.
All right.
Call him Paul Blurt.
Oh God. Round 1. This day in history. Question number 1. On this day in 1937, a future Secretary of State was born who stated that 500,000 kids dying was worth it. Who was this Secretary of State?
Oh, man.
10 seconds.
I'm realizing I don't know any Secretaries of State, so.
You know at least one.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nick, what do you got?
Madeleine Albright.
All right. Alden, what do you got?
Is it Jackie Chan?
Oh, yeah, it is. You're right.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it's the only Secretary of State I know.
Zach, what do you got, man?
Madeleine Albright.
I love the slow reveal.
Buddy says Albright. Mitchell says all right.
All right. All wrong.
I think he meant Albright, but
I think that's what he was going with.
It is Madeleine Albright. Let me fix my scoreboard here real quick, so that I can.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton was one too, so that would have been a pretty good guess. Except for the age.
Said that. I was like, is that the age right? Yeah, that was my only like rough guess, but I thought I was closer with Jackie Chan. So
who's
somebody
the current Secretary of State, Alden?
I'm sorry. Oh, I have no idea.
It's Little Marco.
Yeah.
Little Marco.
Basically, somebody said 500,000 kids have died in Iraq. Do you feel like, was that okay? And she's like, well, I feel the price was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, worth what? Like, what did we get?
What did anyone get? Like, other than, I don't know, Halliburton, you know, I don't know. It's not great.
When
there you go.
See, I know the general system movements. I don't know who's in charge of what, though. I don't care. Oh, we lost.
I think my internet's messing up a little bit. Can y'all still hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you, though, yeah.
Your video quality is horrible.
Your face looks better, actually.
That's fine. I don't care if my video quality is bad. All right. Question number 2. On this day in 1765, the Quartering Act was passed in Parliament. What was the purpose of the act? Vague descriptions are just fine because the answer is like an entire page.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Zach, what do you got?
To pull people into 4 parts with a horse.
I almost joked about that. Strawn and quartered.
Okay. Alden, what do you got, man?
I was gonna say that, and then I decided to go with housing soldiers during the Revolutionary War.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, force colonists to force colonists to house soldiers, basically.
I like the pulling into 4 parts better, though.
Outline the locations and conditions in which British soldiers are to find room and board in the colonies.
It's like a bed and breakfast against your will.
Yes, exactly.
What a shitty law.
Question number 3.
Bed and brekkie.
On this day in 1800, who ordered that the federal government be moved from Philadelphia to D.C.?
I don't even know anyone who was alive in 1800.
I'm trying to think. I'm like, I know before and I know after. Who the fuck was around
10,
then? I literally,
9.
we need Zane.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The audience says Paul Greenberg. The first real guess is Thomas Jefferson. Nick, what do you got?
I says John Adams.
All right. Alden, what do you got?
That's who I was thinking, so I'm just going to go with it.
All right. Zach, what do you got?
Doesn't seem legal. I just scribbled.
I think that's way too old, though. What'd you do? What is this? It is? Oh my god. I thought that was too old to be him. But I couldn't get that out of my mind.
What do you mean too old? He was around.
Philly was robbed.
He was prior to 1800, like in terms of like legislation.
Well, think about it. 1776 was the war. 4 or 5 years later,
Oh, no, that
you're
makes
in the
sense, yeah.
1780s. You've got the articles there for a while. Then Washington's president for 8 years, and then you've got Adams. So you're right on 18.
All right, it's not so bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I didn't
couldn't
listen
get
to
the
any
name
of
out of my
that,
mind.
which is my
Say what?
problem.
All right. Question number 4. On this day in 1941, the first Allied aircraft to use what form of propulsion was successfully tested? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Alden, what do you got?
We all know it's probably fart propulsion, but I went with jet.
Okay, Zach, what do you got?
Jet.
All right, Nick.
I'm going with the crowd and saying jet.
The audience also says jet, and the answer is turbojet. I'm giving it to everybody because just because y'all didn't know the word turbo, you shouldn't be.
We're all winners, so we're all losers. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a ramjet, so we're kind of left with.
Whatever, Nick. Whatever. Turbojet. That was the correct answer, but I'm giving it to you because I'm a benevolent leader.
Planes are cool.
All right. Question number 5. On this day in 1942, cavalry officer Ronald Reagan requested to be transferred to what division? 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Zach, what do you got?
California.
Alden, what do you got?
The California division. I have no idea. I put Rangers. I don't know.
All right, Nick, what do you got?
Psychological warfare.
And the audience says films or Hollywood. Hulkywood.
Hulkywood.
Nobody got it correct. It is the Army Air Force.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
Air
can you
Force.
request to be a ranger? That's probably there's a whole other process for that, probably. But
You can request, but I think
they do the ranger training in North Georgia. I think isn't that close to me?
They could. I don't know.
I heard it was
Part
there.
of it might be some of it.
Air Force used to be part of the Army, just so everybody knows.
But being that he was an actor doing something that does propaganda like
When did it-
psychological warfare made sense.
When did the Navy absorb it?
The Navy
Air Force
didn't absorb
Air
it.
Force is its own thing.
Is it? I thought it was part of the Navy.
No, it broke off.
The Marines are
Became
part of
Air
the
Force.
Navy.
I know the Marines are. I
But
thought
the
Air Force
Navy has
also
their
was.
own Air Force base.
They land on their goddamn boats.
They have their
That's
own
probably
Air
the
Force.
Navy.
The
They have
largest Air Force in the
Air
world
Force.
is the U.S. Air Force, and the second largest is the U.S. Navy.
I think it might be the other way around. Not even kidding, but you
Really?
may know more as
No,
per usual.
I don't know. No.
All right, question number 6. On this day in 1972, what state leader and presidential candidate was shot at an outdoor rally in Laurel, Maryland? Buddy says Alden is retarded.
Oh yeah. For sure.
On this day in 1972,
Mine-
what state leader and presidential candidate was shot at an outdoor rally in Laurel, Maryland?
My Navy knowledge is like limited to Top Gun references. I don't fucking know. I didn't go to the goddamn any kind of military action at all. So
All right, Zach, what do you got?
I just wrote Kennedy because probably, but no, I have no idea.
All right, Nick, what do you got?
David Duke.
All right, Alden.
Reagan.
The only
I think
people
that
who
was in
got
the
this
80s,
right
but-
was the audience.
Oh,
Wallace,
George
who-
Wallace.
It is Alabama Governor George Wallace.
Oh wow.
Apparently, way back in the day, my dad and uncle got called up on stage on some game show that was on TV. And as kids, they asked him who they were going to vote for. And my uncle was like, I'm voting for George Wallace. I mean, that's one of our family stories for some reason.
All right.
All right.
So funny.
That's an interesting lineage. Yeah.
All right, question number 7. On this day in 1988, Soviet forces began what process in Afghanistan? Ten seconds.
My family lineage of getting called on stage, my dad was at Halloween Horror Nights, one of the first Halloween Horror Nights, and he got picked out of the crowd. He did not volunteer to play, what's his name? Norman Bates from the Psycho thing in the shower and do the silhouette of the stabbing. And he was so shy that the person who was playing the murder victim had to pull his hand to him to like look like he was going.
That's hilarious. All right,
Another
Nick, what do you
call on
got?
stage then.
I says withdrawing.
All right, Alden.
Guarding poppy fields.
All right, Zach.
Leaving.
Leaving.
The audience also says withdrawal. The answer is withdrawal.
Nah, it's guarding poppies. Why else are you
I
in
mean,
Afghanistan?
That's a better use of your time than withdrawing. But yeah. All right. Final question of round 1. On this day in 1969, the current all-time leading rusher in the NFL was born. Who is he? Mitchell also says, AKA pulling out. Alden, I'm going to be very disappointed if you don't get this.
All-time leading rusher.
In yards, just so you know. Like all-time leading
Oh, okay.
yards rusher. Yes.
Man.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Nick, what do you got?
The juice is loose.
OJ Simpson. Alden, what do you got?
Is it Harris?
All right, Zach, what do you got?
I said Gronk.
The audience says OJ.
OJ.
Y'all are all incorrect. It is Emmitt Smith.
Oh.
Dallas Cowboys.
Damn it.
I
right.
was like, I thought
You put me on.
I
I
couldn't
was
remember
like,
his
is it-
name, so I chose the joke answer.
Fair enough. All right, after
I,
one round, Nick and the audience are tied at 5. Zach and Alden are tied at 3.
I thought that you were saying it might have been a Steeler because you were like, if I don't know this kind of thing. So I'm like,
No,
oh man, I'm
because
like,
we play fantasy football together and you follow the NFL. That's why.
I follow current NFL. I have no idea.
That wasn't that
the
long ago.
Previous
that
NFL.
was not very long
In the
ago.
90s, like
What?
90s, right?
No, he retired in the 2000s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Round
I was
2.
12.
Rushers. This is all NFL running
Oh,
backs.
okay.
There
Emmett
we
Smith
go.
for every answer.
Emmitt Smith is the all-time leading rusher with how many yards?
In
Closest
his career?
one gets the points.
Total yards in his career?
Total yards in his career. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Zach, what do you got?
5,380.
All right. Nick, what do you got?
10,000.
Okay. Alden.
19,000.
19,000. Audience's first guess was also 10,000. Alden gets the points. It is 18,355.
That's pretty close, actually.
You were extremely close. You just got to think. Emmett rushed for 1,000 yards nearly every single season in the NFL, and he played about 16 seasons.
That's basically the math that I did. Was I just did 1,000 on average times a long-ish career. Yeah,
That's what I was. Yeah, I started at 1,000 yards a year, and then looked at 10 years worth of it.
Well, nowadays it's only 10 years. Like nowadays, running backs don't go more than 10 years.
But back in the day, they were built.
I'm a running back is like 4 years at this point.
Yeah, that's
fantasy purposes. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, question number 2. Who was the first running back to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season? 5, 4.
I'm noticing I don't know how to spell names.
2, 1. All right, Alden, what do you got?
LaDainian Tomlinson.
All right, Zach, what do you got?
Gonzo McMillan.
He's frozen. I says Adrian Peterson.
Good guess. I wasn't sure like what the modern mark was for like breaking the 2000. Like if it's older, if it's more recent, I have no idea.
I think I'm back. Nick, what do you got?
You're back, yeah.
I said Adrian Peterson.
All right. The audience says O.J. Simpson. It is O.J. Simpson.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
So it's a touch older than I.
He got 2,003 yards.
Oh, wow. By the skin of his glove.
That's a good one. All right. Question number 3. Which elusive running back retired at the peak of their career in 1999, a controversial move that cost him the possibility of being the all-time leading rusher?
Yeah, probably would have.
He definitely would have.
This one I know. This is my favorite rusher of all time.
I cannot wait for you to get this wrong.
Really?
No, you're going to get it right. I just hope you get it wrong because that'll be so.
Oh,
fun.
I was going to say, okay, I didn't.
3.
To me, this is so obvious,
1.
but
yeah. All right, Alden, let's have it.
So
it's
obvious.
Barry Sanders, right? It's got to be
Bernie Sanders.
What, Zach? What do you have?
Russell Rusher.
Russell Rusher.
Nick, what do you got?
I got nothing on this one.
It's John Adams.
I'm going to let the audience. They have 2 more seconds. 1, 2. It is Barry Sanders.
Yeah. He wanted to get traded away from the Lions because the Lions sucked fucking red dog dick and they couldn't do anything with him. He was carrying him on his back and they wouldn't trade him. And so he was like, fuck it, I retire. He wanted a chance to do something as a team and like win, a title or whatever. Also, Rod Woodson, cornerback for the Steelers in like 94 or 5 or something, was trying to tackle him. Rod Woodson is a Pro Bowl cornerback.
One of the best cornerbacks of all time.
Cornerback, yeah. And one of the best. And blew out his knee trying to fucking just on a juke, just catch him. Like a non-contact knee blowout just because of his moves. The guy was insane. Absolutely one of the best runners of all time, if not the best.
Even if you don't have an interest in football, just go type into YouTube Barry Sanders highlight
his
reel.
Runs, dude.
You'll be blown away at what this man could do.
I love to get high and just watch his highlight reel.
Yeah, high.
I swear to God. I thought that too. Yeah, it's just It's insane what he could do. He was full stride in his run, and he was like this far from the ground. What?
Yeah.
Like how? I don't understand it. I
All
don't
right,
get it.
Question number 4. What legendary Browns running back averaged over 100 yards per game for his entire career?
Legendary and Browns in the same sentence doesn't compute for me.
There's only like 3 legendary Browns players ever. So
I was gonna try like is this a trick question where someone only played for 2 years or something?
No, he played for the Browns his whole career.
I'm the only name that I feel like Jake will get a kick out of this. This is a joke, sort of. It's like a Hail Mary answer, but I feel like Jake will get this.
All right. 2, 1. The audience says Sequitius Sequitiarius.
It's a legendary name.
What is happening?
All
That
right,
is legendary.
Nick, what do you got?
Ohio doesn't exist.
That's who it was, yeah.
Alden, what do you got?
Peyton Hillis.
Peyton Hillis. Great.
Do you remember Peyton Hillis?
Dude, he was around for 2 seconds. Zach says IDK.
That's what I'm saying. So he could technically, in my mind, because if he played 2 goddamn seasons or something, and he did good for like one of them, then
He
his
was so
average
good
would still
for a
be.
minute. He just was underutilized.
He was
Jim
on the
Brown
cover.
is the answer.
Oh, it's literally his
Actually,
name is Brown. Zach, I feel like you could have gotten this by guessing.
I thought that, and then I went with the, but I wasn't sure, and I went with those.
I thought about guessing Cleveland Brown, but
All right.
I figured that wasn't it.
Question number 5. Which running back was part of the team known as the Greatest Show on Turf in 2006? Some quack says they almost typed that in as a joke.
What, Jim Brown?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It sounds like a joke answer. Exactly. The Greatest Show on Turf?
The quarterback at the time was Kurt Warner.
Ah.
5.
I thought I had it.
4, 3.
That's
2,
too early. Or too late.
1. Nick, what do you have?
I got nothing.
Okay. Zach?
Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Alden,
You got it.
what do you got, man?
Okay. Is it? I don't know the back. Is it the Cardinals? Is that the team? Or I don't know where Warner was at this time. See, he moved around so much. I had no
Was he
idea.
in St. Louis at the time?
He was in St. Louis at the
That's
time.
the other
That's
one
what
that
I was thinking.
yeah.
I was trying to.
Yeah.
Fuck,
Marshall
that's
Falk.
my name.
Oh, damn it. Okay.
Motherfucker. I was thinking that. Fuck.
Because
You might as well blurt an answer and get a negative score.
when you said
for
that, I was
fun.
like, oh, Cardinals. And then I'm like, wait, no, I think that was St. Louis. Anyway, and now St. Louis is LA. Fuck it. I don't know.
All right. Final question of round 2.
Patriots.
Which Hall of Fame running back played his entire career for one team and had the nickname Sweetness? I'll give y'all a hint. Emmitt Smith broke this man's rushing record. Did y'all hear the hint?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just didn't help.
Just making sure. Y'all, the first hour and 10 minutes of this broadcast, my internet was perfect. The last hour has been atrocious. The satellites are not in sync.
We're not noticing much.
Good.
It's no different
3,
than normal.
2, 1. All right, Alden, what do you have?
Hershey's Kiss.
Hershey's Kiss, totally. Zach.
Michael Hershey.
Nick, what do you have?
Adrian Peterson.
We both went with Hershey. That's so funny. Adrian
That
Peterson. There you go.
Walter Payton.
Oh, Peyton.
What in the
Okay,
world?
fine.
Is the correct answer. All right, after 2 rounds, Alden and the audience are tied at 7.
Hey.
Nick has 5, and Zach has 2 since he blurted out an answer.
Did I really get nothing that entire time?
You got 0 running backs correct, Nick. I'm very disappointed in you.
That's bad. You didn't ask any Steeler related questions. So
I did that specifically because I knew you and Alden would both be here.
Yeah.
Honestly, don't know what a running back is except what it sounds like. Someone who
I
runs.
was waiting for a bus question or something, but
Yeah, no, I was never going to ask about Jerome Bettis or Le'Veon Bell or anything like that.
Matu Ma'afala.
Or definitely not him.
Which running back
was cool.
finished his career in a Super Bowl at his hometown stadium? You know,
Michael Vick.
Jerome Bettis. Michael Vick, yeah.
Who caught
Which
the
running back?
immaculate reception?
That's Harris. That's what I was saying earlier. That's
Franco Harris.
That's who I thought when you said you should know this. I was like, wait, what did Harris get more
There's
yards?
literally a statue of Franco Harris catching the immaculate reception in the Pittsburgh airport.
Of course,
right next to the George Washington statue.
Is he catching the immaculate reception and is he like eating an absurd sandwich with French fries on it at the same time? Because that would be like the most Pittsburgh thing I've ever seen.
That would be a pretty Pittsburgh thing.
All right, here we
They
go.
have the craziest sandwiches.
Final round. Question number 1.
I'm gonna lose this. This is money.
Around 3000 BC, which ancient civilization is credited with developing one of the earliest forms of money, using silver bars and grain as standard units of exchange? Three, 2, 1. Zach, what do you got?
Babylon.
Okay, Alden.
Same, Babylon.
Nick.
Yeah, it says Mesopotamia, which
that's a region.
Well, but it's a whole thing there.
Sumer.
The audience says
Sumer.
It's the Sumerian.
Damn it! I feel like I've answered Babylon and the Sumerian, actual correct answer so many times over the course of trivia, but
that was my backup college.
All right, question number 2. What commodity was commonly used as a form of money in ancient Egypt?
Commodity.
Yeah, audience is winning right now, y'all.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I like that I've been able to stump Nick a few times. This has been great. 3, 2, 1. All right, Alden, what do you have?
I mean, I don't know. I wrote fucking papyrus, but that's probably not right.
Zach, what do you have?
It's so rare, papyrus.
BJ's.
BJ's? That's a commodity now?
How do you
If
exchange?
it's tokenized.
On the blockchain.
On the blockchain, yeah.
Yeah, we lost Jake, so I'll.
Oh yeah, he's gone.
Stall a little bit until he gets back.
Damn it! There we go. Nick, what do you got?
Cats.
Cats. Some quack says slaves. The answer is grain. Okay, y'all. I'm gonna do one thing real quick. I'm gonna leave and come back in. Okay, so give me one second. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now that Jake's gone, what do we actually want to talk about?
I thought of something as I was spray painting the ceiling, and I forgot my glasses, my like safety glasses, and I'm like squinting. I feel like pulling out is like the equivalent of like contraceptive equivalent of like squinting instead of grabbing safety glasses. You know what I mean?
What?
Yeah.
So are you high on paint fumes right now?
Oh God, I 3 cans of spray paint on my bedroom ceiling because I'm too cheap to buy like an actual paint sprayer.
I guess you could also consider it similar, like whenever you're cutting with an angle grinder and you don't have a shield and you just like squint but kind of look away so you don't get
or like do like this when you're welding, like yeah.
Super relatable.
Yeah.
I do that stuff all the time.
Yeah. You know, when you just kind of like squint and hope that nothing goes in your eye, it's fine.
All right, here we go. Question number 3. Which ancient kingdom is believed to have minted the first standardized coins around 600 BC? You get a bonus
Kentucky.
point. You You get a bonus point for naming the alloy used. Zach gets -1.
Yes.
What? What did Zach say?
He just blurted out an answer.
Well, what was his blurt?
Kentucky.
Kentucky. Yeah.
It's the Kentucky alloy. Oh, it's the Mountain Dew alloy. Oh my god.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nick, what do you got?
I said Sparta and bronze.
All right. Alden?
Rome and bronze.
It's way before
Zach,
Rome.
do you have anything
Greece
besides
and
Kentucky?
bronze.
Good Lord.
Sparta and Greece.
It is none of those things. It is
Oh.
Lydia and Electrum.
What the
Yeah,
fuck
I
is
love
Electrum?
It
That
is
sounds
a
like a bad
It's an alloy
2000s
of
band.
gold and silver.
What? Why would you do that?
Good question, but they did
You
it.
just want gold to tarnish? Like, why would you? I don't understand the benefit of gold and silver.
Alden, this is 600 BC. Shut up.
Gold and silver.
Final question of
Why?
the game. Alden is still in the running to tie the audience. If the audience gets it correct, they win.
Yeah.
Here we go. Question number 4. Who is credited with issuing the first paper money during the 7th century AD? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Zach, what do you have?
Babylon.
Nick, what do you got, man?
France.
France. All right. Alden?
England? Is that even a thing yet?
England. I'm waiting another 2 seconds for the audience. They've been on a massive delay today, y'all. Just FYI.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been pretty
And they're
bad.
still going to win, so it doesn't matter.
They're still going to win. Their first guess was England. Everybody got it wrong. It is the Chinese.
Oh, interesting.
Nice.
China.
Yeah. China. There we go. Well, congrats. Congrats to the audience.
Yeah, I was off my game today. It happens.
Yeah.
I was on my usual game.
Yeah, this
Coming
is very
second.
unusual for me. I'd normally rocket this.
You're usually in the net positive points, Zach. What happened?
You've now got the record for lowest score. So
Yeah. I can be a trivia question.
All right, we're going to blow through all this because we're at 2 hours and 22 minutes right now. So we're going to watch this quick video on Instagram. Then we're going to watch a few funny videos, and then we're going to get out of here. So Zach, pull up this one, and then I'll do the funnies.
The ATF go into a house, and the ATF is like, hey, you bought some guns. We need to see if you still have them because of straw purchase. A complete violation of your Second Amendment, your Fourth Amendment, and just, basic common sense and humanity. Here's where the ATF agents, they go to one dude's house, and the dude goes, oh, yeah, I'm going to go get it. Hold on a second. Closes the door, calls the cops. He goes, there's somebody out here pretending to be a cop who wants to see my guns. And that's how you get this confrontation right here.
Hey, turn around. Let me see your hands. Turn around. Let me see your hands. Okay, let me see your hands. I need to see some ID. Get on the ground. Get on the ground now. Get on the ground.
What's your deal?
Get on the ground now.
I'm a federal agent.
917-110-3.
I'm a federal agent.
Get on the ground so I can find out who you
Oh,
are.
is this the one where the guy has like
This is
a
how you
heart
get shot.
condition?
I got my ID.
Do not reach for your waist. Keep your hands up.
Dude, why would I have an O-leg shit?
Get your hands up. Get on the ground.
Face down
Now.
Face down. You guys are making a big mistake.
You are the one making a mistake.
And then he finds I get on the ground. I'm a federal agent. If that got you off, have a cigarette. Get ready for round 2 because it gets way better.
Wait a second. Do not resist.
I'm not resisting.
You're acting like a moron.
Wait a second.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Don't do this. Wait a second. I got a medical condition. Get my license out of my pocket. We're getting you secured first. Please, wait.
No. Hold on. I'm hyperventilating.
I can't breathe.
I'm not resisting. Would you please get my ID out of my left pocket? Stop resisting. You. My wife's pregnant.
What a shit show!
My wife's pregnant. Where did that come from?
He said what?
Get your taser out, Bill. No, don't do that. Don't make me. Don't do that. Okay. Get him cuffed. Get him cuffed.
Don't taste me, bro. I'm a federal agent. Oh, fuck you, Patriots not win. Somebody show me Nancy Pelosi's floppy tits. Quick. Medical emergency.
Oh,
That's an older video, but a good one.
Yeah, I've seen that one a ways back.
Yeah, but still worth repeating. If the good Lord, DEA ever shows up at your house, just go
ATF.
Inside for a sec. What?
Call the
ATF.
cops.
ATF. Yeah, call the cops.
Any of them.
If DEA shows up, you got a different problem, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
then
true.
you go inside, you start flushing shit, I think.
But man, that's just so funny. That cracks me up. All right, y'all. Cleanup crew, just real quick reminder. Head on out to the Mellow Mushroom in Cartersville this Saturday, May 17th at 4 p.m., 28 South Wall Street, to join a bunch of libertarians petitioning to get our ballot access back, getting signatures from around that area. So very important to do in Georgia at this moment. So go check it out and enjoy some pizza and have a beer with Mitch and a few other folks and fight for liberty. So go out there and do
Is
that.
this cleanup crew because of like house cleaning or like cleaning up the Georgia doo-doo, the political doo-doo that Georgia is?
Whatever fits it,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, y'all, this show has gone a little long because I really wanted to talk about the diversity issue that we talked about earlier. And obviously needed to talk about Bitcoin going back over 100K. And then our guest showed up. So that was
surprise.
Was a happy surprise. I thought he did great.
Considering I was like warned that it would get like more controversial kind of a thing, but we just talked about fish a lot of it.
We try to be respectful to him because we could have got real spicy there, and I definitely held back.
And look, we're not.
Well, he could have too, and he didn't, and so that's cool.
And y'all, people have been saying this in the comment section, and I've been talking with folks about this quite a bit, and we're not a show that's going to be here just to be confrontational for no dadgum reason. I would prefer to have actual conversations with folks who disagree with us. Like we agreed on many things.
Classes,
He admitted he'd never been exposed to libertarians before. So let's not confront
a bad taste in his mouth. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's not act like a dick to a guy who has no idea what we think or how we believe, or
let's not shame him for being white coming from a bunch of white guys. Like,
he didn't come firing at us, so we didn't go firing at him. So
correct. Yeah. If a guy comes on and starts spouting things that are like objectively horrendous,
a lot of hot takes,
or like he's being confrontational, then heck yeah, game's on, we'll go at it. But like,
I'm curious like how he speaks with more like-minded company, and maybe some things come up that are different that maybe we would have commented on differently or whatever. But yeah, I thought that he brought up some things that were, most of what he said had a grain of truth to it, or a side to it that I could get down with or agree with. So it was not hard to be, cordial in that. And I agree. I'm always trying to like represent libertarian, whatever, whether it's the party or ideals or just be a good damn person. I don't know. Just like give people the benefit of the doubt, regardless of political belief. But
heck yeah. Zach, I'm going to let you play the videos for the funnies because my internet is iffy at best. So let's just launch right into it. Let's play the first one.
All right.
What you doing out here?
Relaxing.
Oh.
I'm on
Telling my antisocial
just
husband.
Now when I was up refilling my drink,
I made a friend on the cruise.
I met the nicest couple, Rick and Jen, and they're going to Castaway Cay tomorrow too. Their daughter's the same age as Ava. They were so sweet, and I told them, I was like, we should all get a cabana together.
What?
Yeah.
Jane.
They were so nice, so we're gonna try and all get spots
First off,
together.
we're on the same boat, so we're all going to the same island. We don't need to make new friends. Are they Disney people?
Yeah, I mean, oh wait, that's what I forgot to tell you. They have the cutest matching Disney shirts.
No.
on.
No.
Yes, it was
No.
adorable. She said they're all wearing
Disney
wait,
adults and
but
I don't get along. No.
they're all wearing
No,
matching.
thank you.
They're all wearing matching bathing suits tomorrow
Jane,
too.
Disney adults and I do
No,
not
I
get
told.
along.
Oh my gosh, I told Rick he's actually doing trivia night tonight too.
Well, Rick can enjoy trivia night. I will not be there.
Disney adults.
Funny because we're
And,
like you said, everyone's getting off the boat.
Jane,
Honey,
I am not a Disney person.
maybe he can convince you. He
No,
loves Disney.
I don't want to be.
He
No.
said this is their fifth Disney cruise.
He's a fucking sucker.
Honey.
Jamer,
And they go to Disney every year.
Jamer, I am
You
so
probably
fucking
have so
popular,
much-
I don't need any more.
We have so much in common
I am
with
so
him.
goddamn popular. I don't need any more friends.
Honey,
No. No.
Speaks for all men everywhere is the comments.
All
I
men
am
everywhere
not a Disney adults and I
do not get along.
I've never heard the term Disney adults, but like, yeah, I understand.
Yes, agreed. All right, this is if Michael Scott worked at Lumen, and if you haven't seen Severance, highly recommend you go watch Severance.
I still need to watch
Well, I can tell you're already fitting in.
That's what she said.
People say I am the best boss. They go, God, we've never worked in a place like this before. You're hilarious. And you get the best out of us. I think that pretty much sums it up. I live by one rule. No office romances. No way. Very messy, inappropriate. No. But I live by another rule. Just do it. I'm an adult. I don't have to think or do anything. You're a kid. You're a little snot-nosed punk kid who thinks he's better than everybody else. Sometimes you have to take a break from being the kind of boss that's always trying to teach people things. Sometimes you have to just be the boss of dancing.
The board won't be contributing to this meeting. Folk.
Oh, hey, no problemo. Listen, man, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Maybe we could go out for a beer sometime, and you could tell me how you do that to another dude.
All right, if you haven't seen The Office and Severance, that probably won't be that funny. So apologies.
I've seen half of it, and it was still kind of funny, honestly.
All right. Here's the next one. It's just a Mexican telling his Latino friends to pronounce names of cereals.
¿Cómo se llama ese cornflake?
Esos son los de mi sobrino, Cookie Crips.
From the east to the west coast. This is that. ¿Cómo se llama ese cornflake? Yo comía de eso. Racist food. Y este aquí.
Esos son los del arroz, Rice Creepy.
Y este aquí. Oh, ese es para campeones. Wedis. Y este aquí.
Los de manzana, Apple Hack.
Ok, deja último. Oh, yo comía ese. Frosty Mini Weed. Give me the weed. No voy último.
Ese es Horny Budget of O.
My back, lick my pig. My back, lick my.
Dude, that's so stinking
That got me,
good.
man. What a dumb thing. That's awesome.
That's so stinking good. Is that all I gave you, Zach?
It's all I have, I think.
All right, then I'm gonna
That's a good one, and
share.
then-
No, we're gonna do.
Oh, okay,
we're
okay,
gonna do
we got
two
more.
We're gonna do two more. Hang on. Let me.
The fucking
there.
cereals one got me.
Here we go. All right, we're gonna do three more actually. These are just too good.
Oh man,
Alden, I believe this is one you shared.
Oh yeah.
Hillary Rodham Clinton
Legend.
told people that she was named for the first man to climb Mount Everest, Sir Edmund Hillary. But as Esquire magazine recently pointed out, Sir Edmund did not climb Mount Everest until 1953, 6 years after Hillary was born. However, the First Lady does have a good explanation for the discrepancy. She loves to lie. For
Laura
years,
Donald was the best, man.
Dude,
was,
he
I
was
guess.
he was so stinking good. Loved Norm Macdonald.
I feel like her fucking like a documentary on Hillary should be called like just Born of a Lie. Like it's just insane how many things
Yes.
that she just makes up over the years.
Yeah. All right, here's another one that was put in the Discord.
I'm declaring war on fat gay kids. Not the kids themselves, but on whatever's making them so fat, gay, and pathetic. I'm talking seed oils, SSRIs, MSNBC, and perverts masquerading as teachers and guidance counselors. Sorry, but as an educator, you can't show off your extensive collection of marital aids anymore, okay? America isn't a dance school, a video game competition, or an OnlyFans academy. It's a country. And with the help of President Trump, we'll be focusing on eliminating the things in our society that are turning our kids into effeminate weirdos and skanks. I'm declaring
weirdos and skanks.
Coming for you, Alden.
All right, the final one of the night. If you don't follow Garen Music, highly recommend this follow. This guy is hilarious.
Did I send this or did I just happen upon this as well recently?
I think you sent this, but I also saw it. So
Okay.
I sent this one too. It might have been.
This guy killed me.
He's so good.
Yeah.
Fucking Taco Bell in Ireland. We're frightened. Is it spicy? And I don't want to hear from all these tough cunts who think nothing is spicy. I think bread is spicy. I could use a jalapeno to heat up my home. I'm just a simple Irishman. I've never had a quesadilla before. I'm excited, to be honest. It looks very nice. I just have one question. What is this? Is this petrol? Should I get a hard or a soft shell taco? What would you recommend for a beginner? I know Taco Bell is very standard for Americans, but to us, this is very exotic cuisine. This is probably the most exotic thing to happen in Ireland since we got condoms in the 90s. Nobody knew what to do with them. That's how I ended up here in the first place. And I'm finding myself equally confused by tacos. What sort of sauces do they have? I like mayonnaise and coleslaw. They're my favorites. I'm very excited. Follow me. I'm delicious.
Follow me. I'm delicious. I love that guy.
That guy's hilarious. He's come up a few times to me, and I'm kind of obsessed with him right now.
Yeah, no, he's so
The
funny.
taco thing killed
Dude,
me.
he quit social media for a bit.
Spicy.
He quit social media for a bit because he
Did he?
got attacked by a bunch of folks for one of his posts, and he was like, "I can't handle this," and quit.
That's a shame because he was bringing
spicy.
joy to the world. Yeah, he's too spicy for the world. The man
All
that
right.
thinks bread is spicy.
All right, everybody. Thank y'all for sticking around for this extra long version of Liberty Libations, number 125. Yeah, appreciate y'all. Appreciate our audience. Love these guys on screen with me right now. And we'll be back next week for some more. So we'll see y'all then. Peace.